Right, you're all set.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the November 27th, 2023 meeting of the Board of Selectmen work session. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty, so I'll start with the approval of the manifest. I move to order the treasurer to sign the payroll and accounts payable checks dated November 30th, 2023, as included in the following manifest. Payroll manifest of $83,087.54 for weekly and monthly payroll. Accounts payable manifest of $76,879.59. Where's school accounts payable manifest $300,000. John Stark accounts payable manifest $250,000 for a total of $709,967.13. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Yes.
All opposed? Or reported.
Want to make your other announcement at the beginning?
About the forester.
It's up to you.
So we have had four things on the agenda. One was the manifest. One is Forester Conservation Commission discussion, the police budget presentation, and East Road property discussion. We're going to hold off on the Forester Conservation Commission discussion because our chairman, Ricky Hippler, is sick tonight and he would like to be here, and I don't think it'd be a bad idea to have a full board. Hopefully it'll be a full board next time. This time of year, you never know, but he requested to be here, so we'll put it on the agenda for next week, tentatively. If it works better to have it a different time for everyone, then we'll do that. So, with that, I'll recognize Denise Parrington about the East Street property discussion.
Again, Denise Carrington.
Denise, before you get started, did you guys, I printed everything that she sent. If you guys want copies, she asked me to.
Yeah.
Three.
While you're passing that out too, can I just put a reminder out there that the Parks and Rec Commission is doing a holiday luncheon, December 6th, for seniors in the town of Ware. It is free. You can pick up a ticket at the public library. We have 30 seats still available, so anybody watching tonight or here who might be interested and knows a senior, we're doing it in conjunction with the middle school. The students are very excited. We're serving the seniors a holiday meal, so we'd love to fill all the seats. 4 o'clock. 4 to 5:30, and they're doing a music program as entertainment, so should be a fun event. So I put, I think I mentioned when I was here before, I would try to consolidate some things. Since I'm doing the presentation, I'm just gonna kind of review how we got here. I know, Janice is somewhat new, and for anybody who might be watching, but over the summer, the Ware Athletic Program and the John Stark Football Program came to the Board of Selectmen in a request for more athletic fields, and that was passed on to Parks and Rec. Currently, our athletic fields are maxed out, and in the documents that I sent you, I did pull the tax maps for the fields that we have, so you could see the acreage that is in use, and that you kind of get a sense of how much we're currently using, and all of those properties have no more available land for use. But I just included those in your packets. And overuse is causing some issues. We've seen a lot of issues at Bolton Field. Due to overuse, particularly the rain this year, we have to close fields down and reschedule teams to other fields, so it just makes it difficult. The soccer field at Bolton Field is not a full-size soccer field, and so there's challenges there, and football doesn't have an alternative field to practice on, and lacrosse also uses it, so there's a lot of wear and tear. There is some value in consolidating some of our recreational venues. I think you are all aware of the challenges we've had with vandalism, both at the tennis courts and at Bolton Field. So the more we can consolidate, and the police department has been great with patrolling, but it would be nice to have some consolidation. And adding an additional site closer to the center of town would be helpful. Then we'd have the Southware location at Bolton and something more centralized here. I think we all recognize that we've seen a lot of growth in the town. A lot of new developments have gone in, a lot of new houses, a lot of kids. The athletic programs are growing. I think you each received an email from the head of the John Stark United Soccer Program. His address, he lives in Henniker, but he services the soccer program for Ware and Henniker. And I believe a little over 50% of the students in that program are from Ware. They use 0% of the fields here in Ware because there are none available to them. So all of the sports for John Stark United soccer happens in Henniker because we have no fields to offer up our students here. So that's part of the shortage that we're seeing. So I think the reason you got the email from him is he's in support of this because he is unable to use any of the facilities here in town. Last year, we addressed the decaying tennis facility, and that's still a part of a 5-year plan that could be addressed with a recreation park and center. And just nice to have a recreation park where everybody could gather. So we're not meeting current demands. I do want to recognize the fact that the Ware Athletic Club this past year has spent just shy of $4,000 in helping to make improvements to the field, lining the fields, fertilizing the fields. So they do contribute financially. They built that building at Inison Field, and it will be donated back to the town. So that they have put a lot of resources into helping us. Over the summer, we did 2 property walkthroughs. If you recall, we did the East Road property, and we did the Quaker Street Inison Field property. I think we all agreed after the walkthroughs that the Inison Field property, it's straight downhill to 114, it's very wet, very forestry, a lot of trees, and it just wasn't suitable for field use. But we did feel that there were portions of the East Road property after the walkthrough that were viable, so Parks and Rec was asked to move forward with doing some research. It's been a challenge. I looked at a document that was on the Town of Ware's Conservation Commission's website, and in that document, which was written in 2011, at that point in time, where there's 65 properties in the town that are either restricted for conservation use or held in fee by town or government. We have 8,500 acres in conservation, and we are just shy of 23% of the land in the town of Ware currently being in conservation, 23%. So it's been a challenge for us because a lot of the property has restrictions on it. And so when we try to find a location for a field, it's just been a real challenge. So that's why we've kind of been focused on this particular piece of property. So what I did for you in this document that you have in front of you is instead of having you go through multiple sets of minutes, because I did go back to 2011 and went through minutes from both the Conservation Commission, the Finance Committee, and the Planning Board and the Select Board. And so what I did is I pulled out, I cut and paste out of each one of those minutes anytime the East Road property was spoken of at any one of those meetings. I just cut and pasted in here rather than giving you a big stack of minutes. And so the first the first piece of information that I found was in 2011. And it appeared that there was a presentation at the Conservation Commission, and the focus on this piece of property was more lot line adjustments with the owner than it was at the time talking about putting that land into conservation. And I believe the lot line adjustments were being done in preparation for the land, but I think that most of that focus, and I do think that I highlighted on the document, I don't know if your printed ones are highlighted, some of that lot line adjustment would end up creating a non-conforming lot with the existing apartment building, so I think that's why it was, I don't know why it was at the Conservation Commission, but that was a lot of the focus of the discussion. The planning, the next set of minutes was in July 28, 2011. Again, I highlighted some language. Again, they were talking about this property. Mike Dahlberg was at the planning board. He was the land surveyor. They did mention that there was some lot line adjustments so that they could make a conforming lot to eventually go into conservation. But if you notice, the focus of that meeting, I think, was to get waivers. There was a waiver given for how the property would be marked, and a waiver given, this was a little, again, it's not my expertise, but they requested a waiver to delineate the wetlands on the entire plan, since they were not planning to develop the entire property. So it seems, again, the focus there was really trying to get the land surveyed. There was no mention at this meeting of any conservation easement or restriction on this property at that particular meeting. Then we jumped to December 14th, 2011, Conservation Committee. I added the minutes to this meeting. They did not speak of the East Road property, but they did, Ian McSweeney was there and mentioned that he had 4 properties he wanted to talk about. The 4th property, they had to go into non-public session to speak of it. So I have no idea if that was the East Road property, but I'm just bringing that to your attention. It's a set of minutes I don't have access to. I don't know if somebody would, but they did talk about 3 other properties at that time. The next one there was a series of meetings in December and January, really just to speak about the warrant article and if the warrant article was going to go forward. And then on January 23rd, the Finance Committee did discuss a warrant article for the bank's property. They referenced it as Article 30, but it actually ended up being Article 29 in the warrant. The deliberative session, so I think we spent a little bit of time talking about the deliberative session. We were not able to find the tapes, so all we have to go on is the minutes. But I think for the sake of full disclosure and making sure that there's transparency to the community who may be listening to this or may listen to it in the future, the warrant was read to see if the town would authorize the selectmen to enter into agreement to purchase 137 acres of the Smith property on East Road for the amount of $600,000 in an effort to protect the rural character and natural resources of town, and to further authorize the selectmen to convey certain conservation easements over a portion of the property to a qualified land trust, such as the Piscataquag Land Conservancy or Society of Protection of New Hampshire Forests. Here's where they talk about 20 acres of property being set aside for future recreational facility and gravel pit for the town. Further, to raise and appropriate $380,000, which would be offset by $50,000 from the Conservation Commission and $130,000 from the Mildred Hall Trust with the remainder coming from offset by grants, to total that $600,000. Again, in the, I think you've all seen the warrant itself. So then they had public comment, and we do have the minutes from that. Selectman LaClasse did get up and speak, stated that this is some of the land contains gravel pit that they'd be able to set aside and use for gravel, and that there was, the land could be used for future ball fields. He at no points mentioned that a specific location had to occur for the ball fields, or that there was any restriction on that property. After he finished speaking, Mr. McSweeney spoke. He also mentioned that he was working on this article, and it would allow the town to purchase 137 acres of land on the south side of East Road. 8 acres has an existing gravel pit on it, and an additional 12 acres would be set aside to create 20 acres of athletic facilities. The town would own 37 and 117 would be in conservation. He went on to speak about the abutting properties, mentioned that the land purchased was a good investment by the town, since the land has many uses. And he did mention that 12 acres would be set aside for recreation and ball field. Again, no, the public who was there at that meeting, there was no mention that there'd be any restrictions. And I think we've heard that there was nobody got up and spoke against this, but there was really nothing there other than maybe the cost. So I do want to point out that what we have from that deliberative session really spoke to the use of the land. And then we have the town warrant that I just read that passed, and the property was moved forward for purchase. There's a series of minutes after that. The next minute, August 14th, 2013, the Conservation Commission began to speak about the fact that some of the grants that they had anticipated had fallen through, and that there would be a need for additional funding from the Conservation Commission in order for this project to go forward. And I think there was some questions whether legally this could be done and voted on, or whether it had to go back to the town for vote. If you continue to read, they did eventually have a meeting. A couple of things to note. Again, I mentioned that the town agreed to raise $50,000 from the conservation to go into the portion that the town voted on. However, because they fell short, the Conservation Commission, in the minutes of, let's see here, the minutes of August 14th, they spoke about upping the amount of money that the Conservation Commission would put in by $130,000. So the 130 and the 50,000 would make up that deficit, and they would be putting in 180,000. I believe I understand correctly, and maybe you guys could help. The Conservation Commission's funds that they receive to purchase this land, if I'm correct, comes from current use tax dollars. Is it correct that 75% goes to the commission? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Or is it 25%?
No,
75.
25 goes into the general fund.
So I think because I've heard, I think if you read through this, the Conservation Commission did speak in their minutes that they felt because they were putting in a greater portion of money, that they should have full control over the conservation, the property and its conservation. But I think it's important for everybody to understand that that money that comes from current use is taxpayer dollar. It's money that would have gone towards taxes. So I think when additional money came from the commission, it is taxpayer dollars, not commission money that came from other sources. So I did want to point that out. They eventually, you'll see in here, there was continued discussion about raising that money and whether they needed another warrant article. Eventually, on January 8th, 2014, there was a public hearing held. In the minutes, it said there were no guests in the audience for that public hearing. And a motion was made to expend $180,000 for that property from the commission instead of the original $50,000. With the condition that the conservation land with a conservation easement on it was to be held by Southern New Hampshire Forestry, and that the Ware Conservation Commission would be the manager of the property, with the exception of the athletic fields and the gravel area. I do feel like that was important to mention. Again, there was mention of athletic fields, but no mention that there was any restrictions on the property of this time. But that, even though the warrant article indicated the selectmen would have authority over the property, it appears it was voted at this meeting that, in addition to the increased funding, that the commission felt that they would then have control over the property. On the February 12th meeting, 2014, there was discussion about the haying of the field and the agricultural use, and I think that came up at the last meeting, whether or not we're receiving any revenue from that, but there was reference to that in that meeting. And again, there was a vote that took place on the March 12th, 2014 meeting, that the motion to fund the project was based on the Conservation Commission managing the parcel. So again, I just wanted to point that out. And then on April 9th, 2014, the Conservation Commission minutes reflected that the property was ready to go to closing. I went back to the town office and went back through the entire folder on this property. I was unable to find any, there appears to be a document attached to the file related to the purchase and sales, if you will, but there was no conditions written on that document. It just simply stated the purchase price and who was purchasing it. I went through all of the drawings by Mr. Dalberg. There is reference in one set of minutes here that he was to create a plat and a diagram of where the ball fields and recreation areas would be, along with the gravel pits, and I have not been able, they do not exist in the records, and they were never filed with the deed and the warranty deed, so I don't think those were ever done. There was discussion of it. In those same meetings and that discussion, when they said that they would draw out the recreation and ball fields, no mention that it had to be in a specific place. Attached in your packet, I just provided you with a copy of a letter that came back to Naomi based on the request of the select board. Laura Spencer Morgan was asked to, I think you had submitted some questions to her, and she responded to those. So she went through some of the documents that I did. She did not find any conservation easements at the registry, which confirmed what I had indicated I could not find either. She suggested that somebody call Southern New Hampshire Forestry. I had already done that. They have no record of this property. They've never had any responsibility for it, and as I mentioned, it's listed in Granite View, which is the UNH listing of all property in the state, as unofficial conservation land, so it has never been put into conservation. And again, there is no conservation restrictions in the deed, again, which is in line with the findings that I had. She indicated that the warrant article did talk about 20 acres being set aside for gravel pit and recreation facilities, with no restrictions on whether it had to be just ball fields. I think the broader recreation and ball fields. And then again, it was mentioned if somebody should reach out to Southern New Hampshire Forestry for holding the easement. When I did talk to them, they did ask me to pass along that they would be more than happy at some point to hold that conservation easement if the town decided to go forward with that. So as I mentioned, I gave you the acreage that we're currently using so you could get a sense of if we were to get 20 acres on this property. That's far more acreage than that we currently have in use for all of our fields. So we could more than replicate what we have today. We would not be retiring any of the fields, but we would be reallocating them. For example, football would stay at Bolton, but they would be able to pick up another field for practice. Purington would remain for the little kids because you really can't do a whole lot in that field. It used to be the town dump, so there's not a lot we can do with that. And again, Inison has 2 fields there, but there is really no expansion. But they're good fields and we would continue, to use them.
Is Inison the Quaker
Quaker
Street? Thank you.
property. So I just wanted to make sure that you had a sense if we went through all of this and were able to use a part of that property, 12 acres really could get us a fair number more fields and also potential replacements for the tennis courts. Hope I'm not boring you. So, I think at this point, we've been through all the minutes. Parks and Rec, we're at a place, I did have a conversation back and forth through email with the Conservation Commission. After the last meeting, they were asked if they could make some suggestions of some other land. The only suggestion that I received was to reach out to the private owners of what used to be a
Golf course.
golf course, but that is not property owned by the town of Ware. We would have to buy that property and develop that property, so I didn't receive any other suggestions of currently used, land. And I think I go back to what I mentioned, with 23% of our land in conservation, there isn't, the problem is we have a lot of land, but it has conservation on it, and we can't use it. So this piece of property, and we saw that in the minutes, was very valuable because the town of Ware would own it. This was not a piece of property that was going to be gifted and that we would help financially to put it into conservation. This was an outright ownership by the town of Ware. And I think that's why there was a lot of interest in purchasing this property, because then we could make decisions with what we could do with it. So I think Parks and Rec, we feel we're at a position where this could be viable land for us. So at the last meeting, Mr. Knapp, you said, geez, I don't even know how we'd approach this through a warrant article or what we would do next. So I hope I'm not overstepping my bounds,
No.
but in front of you, I took a shot at a possible couple next steps, and you can rip it up and throw it out, or you can just give it some
That's
consideration.
one pack. 2, 3, 4. There's 4 packages.
So, as the warrant article was written, the warrant article granted the Board of Selectmen the authority to purchase the land and the authority to put it into conservation. So, one possible option, because you have been granted that authority, is that you can make the decisions yourself to convey whatever conservation easements you feel appropriate at this time. And through the warrant article, we have not been able to find any documents that stated that there should be any restrictions. Now, I recognize there was a lot of intent talked about, conversations that happened between board members of different commissions and boards after the warrant article, conversations that happened with the landowners before the purchase, but I haven't, this is what I've found, so it's been difficult to see what that intent was because we haven't been able to find that written documentation. And I think there are a couple of options that could be looked at. We could allow the 12 acres of the front portion of that property to be used for recreation, and then take the 8 acres that was voted on for gravel. And when I look at some of the documents that Mike Dalberg had done that's in the file, I don't know, you probably know better than I do, but it looks like there's more than one gravel facility on that property. It looked like there was 2, but,
Right now, they're only using one, and when the town took it over, right after you go out of the fields,
yep.
previous owners were mining gravel out of there, and currently where the town is.
Yeah, so, as I said, one option would be allow the front acreage to be used for recreation, take the 8 acres for gravel, and take the remaining 117 acres that was voted for conservation and put it into conservation. Second option would be for you to restrict the front 12 acres and keep it agricultural, if you felt that that was the intent to begin with. Set aside the 8 acres for gravel and designate another 12 acres for recreation. Although I do want to state on behalf of Parks and Rec, if you were to designate another 12 acres, I think we all recognized when we did the walkthrough, the cost to clear that entire land, clear it of both woods, boulders, all of the other things, level it out, get utilities all the way back there, would be extremely costly to the town compared to if we could use the front part of the property. And it would put us back into a position of having a facility like Bolton Field, way out in the woods, just setting us up to have vandalism occur. Whereas if we are able to look at the front acreage, the police department could do a drive-by and easily see if there were vehicles down there at off times, trying to do things that they shouldn't be doing. Again, another option is to take it back, so if the select board, and I know you, at times you're in between a rock and a hard place, you have constituents on both sides. One option would be to take it back to the voters and let them decide, since there wasn't clarity from the first vote, as it appears that some people feel that promises were made. Why not, one option, take it back to the voters? Let's create a warrant article that would clarify the intent of the original warrant article, or even change the warrant article altogether. Maybe the taxpayers don't feel at this time that land should be in conservation, but I'm not even sure that that's something that's legally could be done. Or you could decide to turn it back to the Conservation Commission and let them do the allocations. So I just threw some possible language together. You know, we could, if you decided to go forward with a warrant article, you could ask the townspeople to authorize and direct the Board of Selectmen to take action on the division of the 137 acres of already purchased land on East Road, previously known as the Schmidt Property Tax Map 408-123, dividing it as follows to adhere to the original warrant article that was approved in 2013 warrant. Of the 137 acres now owned by the town of Ware, 12 acres to include field and front acreage would be allocated to the recreational facility and ball fields, 8 acres allocated to gravel pit, and the remaining 130 to be conveyed certain conservation easements to a qualified trust. And what would happen if an article like this went forward is if they vote it down, then it's clear that they don't want the front property used for recreational purposes. And again, you could look at legal opinion to craft that a little bit differently, but I think the what Parks and Rec is looking for is, can we get some clarity? In the packet that Naomi just gave you, I don't know how many of you recognized at the last meeting that we were here, but the Ware Athletic and the John Stark football families were all here. They were out the door and in the parking lot. Because of the delay of the agenda, most of them had their kids with them, they couldn't stay. Ware Athletic did do a petition online, that's what you have in front of you, to asking the board to put this to vote before the taxpayers for clarification. Again, it's your decision, but Ware Athletic wanted you to know what their constituents felt. And if you were to move this forward, either to allow us, through your authorization, to use that 12 acres, or if it was taken back to the town for vote, and that vote were to pass, then Ware Athletic would like to go forward with the warrant article, which I believe Jack Dearborn spoke about last week when he was here. We have gotten information back from one engineering firm. So we would be asking for approximately $35,000 if this were to be approved for usage for fields, to do a site survey and layout for the ball fields, because if this does go forward, we have to take some steps to even know, what is this going to cost us? And is there anything hidden there that we don't know about that might not allow us to do what we want to do? I think I mentioned there were some, in some of the minutes, it looked like some of the wetland designations were waived. So, we don't have all the designations of what there might be for wetland, and if we would have any of that as an issue. So I guess that's, in all these months that I've been doing all of this, this is what I found. Parks and Rec would really like to go forward and be able to use this land, but I understand it's not black and white. We do. And that's why I took the liberty of at least giving you maybe a few options to look at.
So do we know approximately how many acres the area you want to use is?
So we would like the 12 acres that was designated. Now, when we did the walkthrough, so it's tough because I've been looking at the maps. So there was a parcel of land, a little over 7 acres, that was added back into the original plans. I think it was inadvertently left out, and it appears to be the fields, that there's at least 7 acres there.
Okay.
When we did the walkthrough, if you remember, when we hit the gate.
Yep.
And we went to the other side of the gate, and I think it might have been you that mentioned that land was not too bad, that could maybe be leveled out for parking. It would be Parks and Rec goal to make sure we had adequate parking so that we're not spewing over into the street. So we would be looking to take the whole 12 acres. We already recognize, like at Bolton, we have 3 fields and not enough parking.
I guess my question was, do we know if that is 12 acres, between the field and that area you just spoke of?
We know that it's at least 7.
Okay,
The field is at least 7 because that was the parcel added back.
okay,
How much beyond that gate?
sure.
There's a little pond.
Yep.
Flat area. Is
Yep.
that 2 acres? Is that 4 acres?
Right.
That's why if you were to make a decision, or you were to put it before the townspeople for vote, and they were to say yes to that area, that's why we really would want to go forward with an engineering firm who would then come in and say, this is what the 12 acres looks like from the road to how far back?
Now, is that something that you would put on a warrant article the following year, or something that,
I would like
how would
it-
you to
it-
approach that?
I think Parks and Rec would like to see the timeline look like this. Either the board makes a decision without going back for a warrant article, and if you were to say yes, you can use the front part of that property. We would want a warrant article on the 2024 warrant. If you were to say, we prefer to put this back for vote on the 2024 warrant. Parks and Rec would still like to see this on there. And if you notice, I wrote at the end of it, and we'd have to get some legal opinion. But if the warrant article XX, meaning whichever, if you were to go with a warrant, fails by vote, then this article would automatically fail.
So that would be a separate warrant article?
Yes,
Okay, that's
it
what I was
would be.
getting, okay.
A separate warrant article. If you decide, sorry, we're gonna take that land and put it, a conservation easement on it, we're not even gonna go for a warrant article because we have no land.
Yep.
We have no other options at this point.
So basically, we put it to vote, to, if that's the direction that, just hypothetically, we went, you'd have to have 2 articles pass
That's correct.
to even move forward.
That's correct. So you'd have to get the townspeople to say, yes, the front portion of the land could be used, and then, yes, we agree to spend $35,000.
Okay,
If the warrant article were to not pass, then we would have language there that
Sure.
even if the other one passed, it would automatically fail. We'd have to get some legal
Sure.
opinion on that. But we would have no other way to go at this point in time
okay,
if we didn't do this. But we don't want to wait another year.
Yep.
Because we have, the demand is there. WAC is really, I think I mentioned they had to rent a field in Henniker this year to accommodate the lacrosse program. John Stark United can't use any fields here. And the longer we wait, and now we're coming into year 2 of a 5-year issue with the tennis facility. So I think what Ware Athletic would, what Parks and Rec would like to see is some decision made, either by you guys or on this year's warrant, so then we know where we're gonna go from here. And
Yep.
do we have to approach the town to buy more land? Because I think it has to be recognized, and I'd want that clear in the warrant article. Passing the use of that front property doesn't, we've already purchased this land, we own it. It would have no dollar impact. The dollar impact would be if they approved our warrant article for the $35,000.
moving forward.
If we were to put fields down there, we would have to come back through in 2025
Do another warrant article.
for a warrant article to say, here's how many fields we want to put in there, and this is what it would cost.
Yep,
I also think if we go any much further back, if we go back into the gravel pit area, I don't even know what the utilities would cost to try to run power, and all the things that we would need that far back.
Yep.
So even if you agreed, you'd prefer us to use the back end of the property, I'm not sure Parks and Rec would go forward with the warrant article, because I think it would be millions of dollars that we just don't feel that the town would be able to feasibly support
Yep.
spending that kind of money, and we'd have to look for some alternatives.
okay.
So I hope I have given you enough to think about. I hope we haven't overstepped our boundaries, but, I think this is an important issue, and I know there's a lot of emotions on both sides, but we're a growing town, and we have needs. In Parks and Rec, we don't have a lot out there to look for.
Okay.
Any questions?
I just have 2, Denise. One is the sales agreement. Have you read that
The sales agreement,
on that property?
I've read everything in the folder.
Is
and
the sales agreement in there?
There's a document in there that has the sales price on it, who is selling it. There's a couple little comments on there, but if there's a sales agreement, it has never been produced. I've been at this meeting twice now. Nobody's produced a sales agreement, and
Well, there had to be one with the town. We just don't buy a piece of land without a sales
so
agreement.
there's what looks like a sales agreement in there, but it doesn't have a lot on it. And again,
Yeah.
I poured through that file again a second time,
Yeah.
just to make sure I didn't miss anything, and I'm not saying I didn't,
No,
but,
Just asking
I only
because-
found this one document that had the sales price,
Yeah.
who the parties were, and what the land that was gonna be.
yeah.
So if somebody else holds that in a folder somewhere else,
I'll look in mine at home because that whole thing went to the Mildred Hall Committee, and we put in, I think, about 150
55,000
Yeah,
in
so
there.
if somebody can produce a different
But
sales agreement. yeah.
whatever I read in there somewhere was that the fields had to be left as agricultural. It was very clear. So just want to let you know that. And then the other thing is, that the selectmen at the time, they agreed to put this into conservation and they dropped the ball. And I think that the right thing to do is to put it into conservation. But I also think that, there may be 12 acres just beyond the field that could be used for that. And I know you talk about cutting the lumber and stuff, but I know people that would come in and cut the lumber off and not charge you a nickel, and they'd take the lumber.
Have you ever seen the timber out there?
No.
It's about this big around.
Well, I
There's
haven't
nobody gonna
walked
go
out
cut
it
that
yet.
for the timber.
So here's just a couple of things I'd just like to say about that. I do recognize that there were a lot of comments made about conservation of the property, but a lot of it took place after the warrant vote. And I think that one of the things that Parks and Rec is looking at, what I've looked at in the research, what I've heard from townspeople is, we vote on a warrant, and that warrants didn't specify any of those things. And I don't know, maybe I don't know enough about how legally you can run the different committees in the town, but then to go make additional decisions, again, the town voted the selectmen to be authorized to disperse the land. But then another vote took place at the Conservation Commission to change that. Maybe that's okay, but I'm just coming off of, and the Parks and Rec is coming off of, what the warrant article said and what the people said. And that's why we're kind of pleading with you to say, with all this confusion and difficulty finding the documents, why not put it, at the very least, put it back to town vote? Let the townspeople clarify.
Add to that a little bit. So the deliberative session, going off of the notes you gave us, quoting that warrant article, it ends, I believe it ends, with, "This is a non-lapsing article and will not lapse until the project is complete or until December 31st, 2018, whichever comes first." Well, the two things that were authorized were the selectmen to enter into agreement to purchase, that took place, and further to authorize the selectmen to convey certain conservation easements, et cetera, et cetera. That we have totally acknowledged did not occur. So I would read that as this lapsed. The project was not complete. December 31st, 2018 has come and gone, and so now the town owns some property. That's kind of my opinion, and we are left with what legally can we do with the property, I would say with a clean slate. I don't think it's a bad idea to ask people their opinion.
Well, are we going to hear from the Conservation Commission? Because they obviously have a lot of background on this property
Yeah,
as
so
well.
So,
I don't know if they were invited to give their
Yes.
opportunity this
I
evening,
wanted
or
to
if
let-
that's another meeting, but I do
Well-
think we should hear from them.
Yeah, well, definitely. I was gonna call on them after Denise was done. This whole project was a fact-finding project, and then I guess it's up to the board to decide if we wanted to make a decision or let the voters make it. But it was fact-finding, which is, as a volunteer, you put in an incredible amount of work. Folks on the conservation are also volunteers, and two in the crowd here got many years in, so I'd like to hear what they have for facts, and then,
And I do want to just state that I'm here representing Ware Parks and Rec, and we did what we were asked to do.
That's right, yep.
I'm not here trying to, I'm not here to try to upset anybody or to claim that somebody did something that they didn't. I just wanted to make sure you had everything that we could piece together.
and that's what the board asked. I remember when it was brought forth, it was asked for somebody to find information, and you have done that, so.
All right, thank you.
I feel comfortable, and if,
I still have 4 questions.
Oh, I'm
So
sorry.
whether that's, some of them may be for you, some of them may be for conservation, but I'd like to, get through them all. I guess the first question mark I noted was with regards to the non-public conservation minutes, and as far as I'm aware, they would have, with the non-public minutes policy we passed, they'd have the ability to look at them, we would have the ability to look at them.
And the reason I brought that up, again, I don't know what's in them, but if there was something discussed about this property and a potential easement, that's an area that
West Valley.
you might want to
Yep.
further look at. Again, I wanted full disclosure on everything.
You mentioned the document that showed the parties potentially entering into agreement, maybe not as clear as it could have been. Does it say, is it just the town of where, or does it say, do we know who spent how much money?
That
Yes,
document, we do know how much money was spent, but that document does not break it out. The only place I found it broken out was there's the warrant article, which broke out where the funding would come from and the amounts. But when the grants fell through, then you have to go back to the commission's minutes, where after a public hearing, nobody was there, they
And
voted.
it went up, but is that what ended up happening?
I believe it was.
I have a list of what I gathered through all my reading as far as where all the funding came from. I don't know if you want to go through that now or after Andy or
I've got-
whoever's going to speak for
I guess I've got
conservation.
2 short questions otherwise, then maybe we could drill into that. You said Mike Dahlberg he had plat drawings and was supposed to draw ball field locations, and where was
So
that?
that was in the minutes of one of the meetings where,
I saw in the very first one, where he
Early,
was.
it was early on.
I highlighted it on one of these, that there was mention of a drawing being done. Oh, right here. Nope, that's not it either. If you want, while the other group is presenting, I can go back through and look at it. I highlighted it in yellow, so it's,
That's just another one that, I don't know who, I don't know how,
Oh,
but if
so-
we had
all
those
right,
drawings.
So if you look at the February, I didn't highlight it, I'm sorry. February 12th, 2014, Conservation Committee. If you go down a few sentences, it says that Mrs. Stevens stated that Mr. Dalberg
Yeah,
was
okay.
working on laying out the ball fields and likely was responsible for that plat. Mrs. Stevens will contact Mr. Holtz and ensure we have control over the easements. You can read the rest. I went back through all of the drawings in that file, and I could find nothing that laid out ball fields.
That's fine, and since it was a Conservation Commission meeting, that may be a question they're able to answer. And then, this again is probably a conservation question, but, or, I think you were talking about at the site walk, somebody was surveying that, at least the gravel area, right?
I think they surveyed the property lines on it,
And
yes.
recently,
Just before I got done for the town, yeah.
and so was that just,
I'm not sure if they
yellow
went
line?
all the way around, but,
Yeah.
yeah, they were, here.
okay. 'Cause
I don't know
remember
if it
seeing
was
the
survey, were they
flags.
blazing?
They were blazing, I guess, maybe is the right way, yeah. Not
Yeah, and they were
surveying.
right behind the,
They're right on the edge of the gravel.
right,
yeah,
but the gravel isn't on the edge of the property,
Close, yeah, on that side.
is it?
is,
Okay. I thought it was like way over here. I thought it was like out
It's
here
close
where
to
this,
one of the
where this
lines
is
there,
going.
maybe, yeah.
Because again, yeah, if that's going on, I'm just looking for more details about that action.
Yep.
You all set with me now?
Yes, thank you, Denise.
Thank you, Denise.
I'll want to recognize Andy and/or Steve. If they have any facts they'd like to put in or answer any of these
Andy
folks'
Bolton,
questions.
Chair of the Conservation Commission. I was the chair of the Conservation Commission when this property was purchased. We've got history on it. It's not just what was the intent way back when with whomever. I was involved in the purchase. On the Mike Dahlberg thing, Mike was a member of the Conservation Commission doing some pro bono work, as I understand it. I do not believe it was completed. I don't believe he was on contract for that. He can speak to that. I believe he's still in town. But I wanted to point out, very interesting when Denise mentioned tonight that after the Warren article, there was a meeting of the Conservation Commission to talk about funding. So I think I'd like you all to note that when the project was gonna fall through for lack of funding for the grants that did not come through, state and/or federal grants, Where did the entity that was trying to get this project complete go? Didn't go to Parks and Rec. Didn't go back to the voters. Didn't say we need a new warrant article for, you know, another $250,000. Ian McSweeney, who was shepherding the project on behalf of Russell Foundation, went to the Conservation Commission, went to Mildred Hall Trust, to entities that had a long-established track record of contributing to conservation land purchase for the town. And that conservation land is town land. There's not town land and then conservation land. So, Conservation Commission contributed a lot of additional funding to this, much more than the original pledge. And why did we do that? Why did I vote for that? Why did Steve vote for that? We're still here. We can tell you. It was for preserving the valuable natural resource attributes of that property, as any other conservation land that we have purchased with conservation funds. So this one is a mixed-use parcel. We acknowledge that. There was a whole town in support of this. This was a selectman supporting it, Conservation Commission, zoning board did their part. I think Steve might speak to that. There's some questions there. And I think intent does matter. And Salem, you say we can just operate with a clean slate now. I'm not so sure, but I understand the sentiment. Times change, people want to do things different, but I think it's a poor mode to go forward on when the argument is largely because we really, really want it. Let me speak.
Because that's mischaracterizing where I'm going with that.
It's your meeting.
If the town owns that land and we are now left in a state where we are not required to follow what was laid out because a former Board of Selectmen failed to do so, does that then mean, what would we do with any other town-owned land? Would it, that's my question. I'm not saying we should do, I'm not saying we are the ones that should make that decision. My question is, what would we do? Would we go to conservation and have
Yeah,
conservation do that?
For me, there are lots of things that
The clean slate is,
inform the
what
answer
would
to
a
that
town,
question.
what would this town do with property like that, without the strings that were attached by this deliberative session, which I think unfortunately the former board didn't act correctly. But, so, I'm just trying to add some clarity. I'm not trying to say, great, now we can do whatever we want. It is, now we can do what we would do with any other property, regardless of any, just treat this like a clean slate, like any other property that came under town ownership, regardless of any other restrictions that may have existed.
And the town owns conservation property. Very little of it is under easement. Conservation easement adds a layer of protection. And this one, as there is conservation easements on the abutting properties, the property to the east, an easement held by Spiniff for the purpose of preserving the agricultural attribute along that East Ware Hay corridor. Naturally, Spiniff, Society for Protecting New Hampshire Forests, and the Russell Foundation were looking at, and the owner, were looking at preserving the rural nature, the agricultural aspect of that property. So that is something I want to be clear on the record. We can decide that it's, conservation property not under easement, therefore it's not protected. I would encourage you not to. I mean, when you look at the property cards on the bulk of our conservation purchased properties, they are town properties. They're not conservation versus town. They are town-owned for the purpose of conservation. And this town has repeatedly expressed its desire through votes and way back when through a community forum to have open space lands that's valuable for hunting, valuable for protecting water quality, and this tiny little piece is valuable for maintaining an agricultural connection with the land. So please, Board of Selectmen, don't view this as conservation versus town. Conservation is town. That was land purchased for the town. And had it not been for our management of the conservation fund, that property would not have been able to been brought into town ownership without going and increasing the amount asked of the voters. So we had a good cooperative deal to get this into town ownership. And I do not think it is something that would reflect well upon this body if we're now to say, all right, well, it was supposed to go a certain way, never happened, so now, you know, whatever our legal options, I'd say there are some times ethics informs our way forward even when we have legal abilities. So I do not believe it'd be ethical to say, we purchased this land for a certain purpose. We had the assent of the town voters at that point. So now, because Board of Selectmen was not able, for whatever reason, to finish off the deal, we can now repurpose it towards a development mode. Conservation Commission can't use conservation funds to buy a parking lot, to build a town hall, build a town office, build a police station. There are only certain things we can use those conservation funds on. And I do not believe rewriting history, and it's, I don't know, hard to call it history because Steve and I were there. It's not like we have to ask someone. We were there and intimately involved in one of the cogs that made this work, only one of them. There were other pieces for sure. Mildred Hall was huge. And of course, you know, there was a tax penalty that we all bore. We all decided together to bear that tax penalty, or at least the majority did. So just please remember, when this thing was gonna fall apart for lack of funding, where did those additional funds come from? They came from a conservation fund managed by volunteers for the town who've been at this for a long time, and thank you, Benji, for that nod, for a purpose. You know, not, you know, the word restrictions, there's no restrictions, no restrictions. Well, yes, there are restrictions on what this body, this commission, the Conservation Commission, and I'm proud to serve as its chair, there are restrictions on what we can purchase land for. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Steve, you anything?
Yeah, hopefully I won't burn up too much of your time. I just want to introduce myself and kind of go through some things. So Steve Najar, my professional background is natural resources management, forestry, so I've got kind of extensive background in environmental, you know, wetlands, minor. Been on the Conservation Commission for about 20 years or so. Been involved with a bunch of land transactions for the town. Really big projects like Eastman. You know, most recently we did the one up off 114. So, you know, I want to say, I mean, we bounced around a ton of topics tonight. I did offer to, you know, assist the recreation folks here in looking for a piece of land that would actually make sense. You know, when I read that warrant article, I see that there were 20 contiguous acres and we were looking at a recreation complex as the outcome at the end of the day. So I kind of, you know, as a taxpayer, I look at this and, you know, do we really want individual fields here and there? Or should, you know, like personally, I have no problem supporting a bond that does that. You know, I don't care if the land purchase is involved or not, as long as it's right for the town. You know, hopefully I'll see it once in my lifetime and that's it, right? And the town get what it needs. So, you know, I hate to kind of, I feel like we're kind of going at this from emotion instead of from science and from a good perspective on what we need, technical feasibility from an engineering perspective, and, you know, kind of good locations, all the things that Denise talked about, they're all good, but I mean, I really think there's only 7 acres there and there's a road running up through the middle of it if we're talking about the fields. You know, I do want to point out that Denise did a good job summarizing a lot of things. I think there were some inaccuracies, like, you know, there may be 23% of where conserved, but we don't own that. I mean, there's we'd have to figure it out, you know, the state owns some, there's private easements that we've got nothing to do with, so that's not really the case, you know, as far as what we as a town owns, much less. There, I sent you all the option to purchase, I did, come up with that, and wanted to mention, you know, we've talked about, Andy did a good job talking about what happened with the funding falling through, and there's minutes out there where I expressed my concern about even the legality of us pumping up the dollar amount to actually buy this thing, because you gotta understand at the time, we couldn't go back to the voters again, because, you know, Ray Banks would have just pulled out of it, you know, there was an option, we needed to execute that option, and that was kind of the deal. And conservation money just requires a public hearing, it doesn't go to the voters, you know, and it, if you look at the RSA on conservation money, it's for specific things, like Andy said, you know, conservation, you can't go buy recreational fields with it. So I was really concerned, back when we did this, about the very problem we're sitting here dealing with today. There was a concurrent board meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the Conservation Commission on December 2nd, 2013, and the topic of discussion was the Banks project. And, you know, in here it says, Mr. Najar addressed the Board of Selectmen upon invite for public comment and mentioned the conditions that were attached to the Commission's funding pledge, including management of the property of conservation land, so that's how it got there. Less than 20 acres to be set aside for gravel extraction and reclamation as athletic fields. So back when we all were dealing with this thing, when it was, you know, went to the public meeting, everybody voted on it. Mike Dahlberg, someone had a sketch, and they were showing that pit area, and eventually that would be the fields. And then as we go through the Board of Selectmen, Chairman Clough confirmed the understanding that the existing fields are to remain agricultural use and advocated a meeting of all the many parties involved in order to address the expectations of each party. So that, and also, you know, I don't know if you guys saw, you know, Ray Banks, the older Ray Banks, not the younger Ray Banks, that actually did the deal. I mean, he was super upset. You know, the town gave their word to Ray Banks. By the way, he decreased the price to make this all work, that was gonna remain agricultural fields. And I think that's super important for the town to stick with its words. It could kill us in future deals. He came into the Conservation Commission, was banging on this table. He was so upset and wanted to buy the property back. That's how upset he is about it. And Ian McSweeney went through a ton of documents. You know, the whole intent was 20 acres that include reclaiming that gravel area. So, and you know, I mean, what I would say, if this idea of throwing it out to the public, that's like, you know, they've got a huge social network, and yeah, it'll probably pass, and you could, you know, write it off. But that's not what the town promised Ray Banks. And I don't think it's a good idea for the town as far as, you know, I think the idea was a much bigger piece, 20 acres. So that's why I, you know, offered to Denise to help up looking at properties. But even like, I like some of what she just proposed. What I would do is I'd fund the engineering, you know, work to go out and look and see what the feasibility is in that back area. Yeah, you know, you can't see it from the road, but kind of figure that out. You know, is it doable, sticking with the original promise? You know, look at how long it would take or what it would take to level the, you know, get 20 acres and what you could build back there. Because I think that's potential. But the other potential I really think is looking at other properties around town to see if there's something that could be had to get this over with once and for all, where you can build a ton of fields all in one spot, have nice restrooms, have, you know, have everything that you would want, you know. So I think that's, you know, I offered, you know, my help up with that as, just as a, you know, resident of the town. If anybody wants to take me up on that, you know, if not, fine. But I think we need to look at the overall background on this whole thing. And then, you know, Selectman Bloom, your questions are good questions, and I don't know if you completely gathered that, so that the land is in it's considered conservation land. You know, it's not just undesignated town land like some of the other town properties are. And so we've done some votes over the years to designate like some town properties as town forests, or as town conservation lands. In this case, it was the conservation money, and it went right on the deed that it's conservation land. So you pull that deed, it says conservation. Andy, I believe, signed the deed. So those are some things in state law. And I think what Laura was looking at, you know, that opinion, we've asked that we actually go back for a further opinion and consideration of everything, not just the warrant article, the public hearing, the, all the different, notes and, other supporting documentation of the whole protection, plan to see what, you know, what it would really take to deal with this issue. Because I think she might have just looked at the warrant article, and that wasn't the whole story, as we all know at this point. But I would really encourage the Board of Selectmen to, you know, maybe throw some money at looking, hey, what do we really need? You know, because it sounds like we need more than just the one or two fields that you're gonna get out of that 7 acres. And there's a wetland behind that, so you're boxed in. The access to the whole property, you know, we still need to be able to get log trucks, which run 100,000 pounds. Probably not legal, but that's what they're at. And, right, Benji? Yeah, no comment. And, you know, and then access in and out of there. So, you know, another interesting thing, on that thing that went around from, that Facebook thing that got everybody here last time, they were talking about, you know, we'll put trails in there, we'll go up Mount William, Mount William isn't owned by the town. And then as far as trails go, you know, we reached out to Parks and Rec, we were trying to get a trails plan together and nobody was interested, so. On a side note, if there's interest in trails, you know, Parks and Rec wants to do that, great. You know, should have chimed in earlier, and we're always there to do that, but. So I'm just, you know, I just want to make sure that y'all know that I'm here to help, and I think we can do this collaboratively. I think the Conservation Commission should have been brought in right away. We had that other discussion, you know, about that shooting range in there. So this parcel, I don't like these mixed-use parcels personally. It's kind of, it's more challenging to deal with. But I suggest we figure out what we really need as a town, try to fund the whole thing, you know, if it's 4 or 5 fields in one place, and have something really nice instead of just picking away, you know, a little 7-acre field that we promised to never develop. Well, thanks for your time. I don't know if you guys got any questions or.
I guess, still got some of the same questions, but then adding on, so you made the remark that the property is in conservation on the
It is,
deed, but
yes. It should be in the town report as well, as conservation.
I thought we had seen that that was not the
The
case.
easement's never been done.
Say
Not
again?
an easement.
The easement's never been done.
Right.
But it's
Yeah.
in conservation.
It's two
We
different.
never finished the process.
I'll just pass this. These are all the deeds. These are the deeds that were on record in that document I talked about. You want to see, I didn't find anything in the deeds, but look at it.
It's not an easement, it's designated conservation land, just like designated town forest. So we have some town forests or conservation lands that don't have an easement on them. And then we have some that have an easement. So the easement,
Yeah.
when we did that, that's like the ideal situation, because it's real clear. The day we close on easement, the conservation easement also went on it. And the Millward Hall Committee wasn't involved with that. So a little different. It's a whole level, you know, you're giving away, like, we are still fee owners, even if it's conservation land or town forest, but when we give away an easement, we gave away a portion of the rights, is the difference.
You're right to point that out. I was not 100% clear. And then I guess going back a little bit, yeah, I guess, do either of you know what was going on with the surveying?
Oh, yeah, so your survey questions, we were, you know, so as a stewardship practice on all town properties that we manage as a commission, we go ahead and have them blazed. We've had discussions here about yellow blazes. Remember that, Naomi? Mm-hmm. So, anyhow,
And that was just the edge of the parcel, right?
outside edge of the parcel, so to make sure that we don't have any encroachment.
Yep.
And that we know where it is when we lay out management practices. So, yeah, we have to hire a surveyor, I think. So like typically if a forester can do blazing, if they can't find the boundary or something, like a monument's missing, then a surveyor gets hired to either relocate the monument or go find it. So that's what happened there. You know, that's a good point you bring that up, just kind of stirs my memory too. So one of the challenges of even doing that conservation easement was you have to have that surveyed out. I mean, like that warrant article that we're just talking about now, that's still not gonna do anything, because it's not, you don't have a survey that says, here it is on the face of the earth nailed down. And that was the problem before. That's gonna take, you know, 20 grand and a whole lot of agreement on where it would go, you know, to even get that all done and monumented. So,
Actually, I've got a proposal. The surveying costs depend upon the complexity of the survey. So if you have, you know, one turn point and two outside bounds, two inside bounds, you got a rectangle. Of course, that's much easier to survey, much easier to record. So, I recently was out on the property in the gravel pit and went beyond the gravel pit towards the eastern bound with Mount William Inc. And out there I found relatively mildly sloped property, which was much flatter, treed, yes, but much flatter than what is on the west side of the gravel pit where it runs up the slope, and there's a lot of bedrock there, and there's a rise in between where the gravel pit is and the access, or the front part and the fields and the access. So just playing with Google Earth with the intent of saying, well, what would 20 acres look like next to, contiguous, as it was in the back of my head when we did this years ago, what would it look like? So what I'm going to share with you is just a printout. On the right is a Google Earth map showing 20 acres in a yellow outline. The northern and eastern boundaries are existing boundaries with property not held by the town. On the left is a, called a LiDAR topography presentation. It gives real fine-grained topography. You can see boulders that are as small as 3 feet in. Stone walls usually show up really well, and this is just pulled off the stone wall mapper. You just typed in, did an internet search on New Hampshire stone wall mapper, you have access to this LiDAR data. Really, really nice topography, and you can do a shading effect to it, which makes it look like the landscape might look with the sun at a certain angle. So you can play with that a little bit, but it shows the gravel pit quite well, and it shows those two parcel boundaries, the northern boundary and the eastern boundary. And I'm, you know, welcome to share that with Denise, but in my thinking, if we are going to, if we can, if we're allowed to register what we're sort of bumping into and kicking around back when we purchased this, you know, maybe 20 contiguous acres out there that maybe there's material. I didn't see a lot of ledge out on that side. Maybe there's stuff that could move around. You have to wait for, presumably, you have to wait for the gravel pit to play out, depending on how the town wants to do it, or the town could decide, you know what, we don't want to pull any more gravel out, we just want to use that to create that rare thing
Sherry, can I see those?
in Ware, which is level town-owned land. So just circulate this around to you. You're welcome to keep it, share it with Denise, make a copy, what have you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any more questions for Andy or Steve?
I don't have questions, but I do have some comments and notes about what I went through, so whenever you're, I don't know if you want
Yeah,
to
still
do that.
curious. You said you had the
Yeah.
info on who paid for what.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys want to take a seat. I might be a few minutes. I went through a bunch of documents in preparation for Denise coming, and I was hoping that the Conservation Commission would also be here to give us some of their background as well. I do acknowledge that from everything that I've read, just as much as the two parties that we heard from earlier, the easement was never completed, and I do think that that's something we need to go forward with. I looked at the purchase and sales agreement, I looked at the zoning variance application, I looked at the DPW evaluation of the gravel pit, the warrant article back in 2013, the minutes, many of which Denise had already gone through, the town council opinion from this year. There's also a Facebook page called Yes on Article 29 that has information from 2012 and 13 in it. There's multiple RSAs that I went through, and just reading through all this, I came up with what I think was what actually occurred as far as funding. The project was $600,000. The Conservation Commission originally pledged 50. They increased that by another 130 for a total of 180,000. Mildred Hall put in 155,000. There were expected to be grants, but none came through. That's what caused the additional 130 from the Conservation Commission. The taxpayers did, through the vote of the warrant article, kick in the 200,000. The Alma Schmid, am I saying that right? Schmid? I always want to put an L in there, I think. They gifted 7.5 acres through the zoning variance application. So that brought the whole thing up to 137.3 acres. I believe either directly or through a price reduction kicked in another 60,000. And based on the below market value of 740K versus the sales price of 600K, that's another 140,000 that they kicked in, even though it wasn't, real dollars. So from their perspective, they kicked in somewhere between 140 and $200,000 by reducing the purchase price or giving us below market pricing, whichever way you want to look at it. So I'm not a lawyer, so everything that I've looked through is my opinion. It's not a legal opinion, so just to keep that in mind. I do believe, though, that there are lots of benefits to the town for children going through these organized sports and having places to play. Makes them better citizens in the future, gets them into leadership roles, all kinds of good stuff occurs from that. So there's also a lot of value in the private organizations that we have, like WAC and the John Stark Generals. They do a lot of good for the town. They put together these sports activities. They get coaches and equipment and low-cost participation for the youth, and all that's great for the community. So my opinion of the facts that I went through have no bearing on whether or not, sports should be done or not. I think those are two separate facts or two separate sets of data. I think they're both good. So my research led me to the personal conclusion that the agricultural fields, those first part of the property, is not usable as ball fields. There is lots of documentation that tells me that those are to remain as agricultural fields and were intended to be part of the conservation easement, and that they are not available for recreation activities in terms of any active recreational activities. There were the 20 acres that everybody's talked about that were to be used for active, and that was the gravel pit once that ceased operation. And why it was never stated, there are some inferences to 12 acres of woodlands. So in my mind, that's right next to the gravel pit. So I can walk you through a little bit more of that.
Yeah. So that's the first time I've heard of 12 acres, quote, of woodlands.
Yes.
That's like the biggest question that's been floating around is where's that 12?
Yeah. So the application to the zoning committee for the lot line adjustment said the acreage is being gifted through no increase in purchase price and would become part of the conservation easement restricted to agricultural farmland. And quote, land being subdivided will never be developed in any manner and will remain in its present state, farmland field. And then in another area of the application, it says, ensure that no additional development will occur on this land. So the lot line adjustment, the subdivision, and the variance approval were all predecessor tasks in the purchase agreement, and they were done in...
I'm sorry, just because I'm hearing it, can you repeat you said it was the lot line adjustment with the 7.5 acres?
Yep, the subdivision of those lots that had the apartment on them, or has the
Yeah.
apartment on them, and the variance approval by the zoning committee. They were all predecessor tasks in the purchase agreement.
Okay.
So the purchase portion of the transaction, we've already talked about that, we went through the 200,000, the warrant article, that occurred. Information that was posted by the folks that were yes on Article 29 in advance of the vote through Facebook on their Yes on 29 Facebook page, and I'm going to paraphrase this, in return for the hard-earned tax dollars that the folks were paying, the 200,000, the town would get a gravel pit for DPW usage, 8 acres, and they estimated that had 8+ years of material on it, and that would save the town $10,000 to $15,000 annually from the gravel coming out of that. Then future conversion of the gravel pit area into athletic fields, which was stated as ideal land for placement of athletic fields. And this is a quote, 8 acres will not be under conservation easement and will continue to be used as gravel operations by the town. Once the gravel is depleted, the town currently plans to convert the area into athletic fields, which is an ideal change of use given its sandy soils and drainage. 12 additional acres will not be under conservation easement and will be available for the town use for athletic fields and other rec uses, totaling 20 acres of land that will remain outside of the easement, and future athletic fields will be placed away from the scenic areas. So,
All right,
we
what
we
document is this again?
Are
Is
you
this,
quoting, I'm sorry, are you reading from a Facebook?
yeah, and it was the yes on 29, let's do this, and it was in advance of the vote.
So it was folks who just made comments on it?
I'm not sure who the poster was on article yes on 29, but it was an admin posted. It wasn't just comments. It was,
Oh, an admin posted
Yeah.
that, okay.
yeah. We could talk about the distinction between passive recreation and active recreation. There's a lot of references in these documents to passive, which, in my mind, those are things that are unorganized and not competitive, things like hiking or, bird watching, that sort of thing. So, I also went through the town council opinion, which we've already talked about. We've talked about the fact that the easement wasn't done, that the Conservation Commission kicked in more money. So I do think that there is something around this lapsing, but I'm not sure I agree with you that the whole project is lapsed. I think it is that the money that was to be used to enter into the easement, that the money has lapsed. I don't think the intent of the easement has lapsed. So I think we can rectify that now. Now, how do we do that, though? Do we ask the Conservation Commission to help with that? Do we ask for more money so that the Board of Selectmen can do it? Personally, I would like to see the Conservation Commission take it over from here because they know how to do this. I don't. So if it is on us to do, I would be relying heavily on them anyway to do it. So,
I guess that's where I left my earlier statement was if this is just land that the town owns and clarifying now that it's, it is in conservation but does not have an easement. If this were just property, like any other property, who would be managing that? Would it be conservation?
Should
That
be
is,
Yes.
that is my biggest question.
I believe it should be conservation, yes.
So, I think we need to at least start writing down
Yeah.
some of this is gonna have to go to town council, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Which is-
And the last thing I wanted to touch on is that we do have someone haying that field. They are haying it, they've been haying it for, 20-some years, I believe.
And fertilizing it.
Yeah,
Taking care
and
of it.
taking very good care of it, from what I understand. But I do think it's in the town's interest from a liability standpoint and a documentation standpoint, so that in 5 years from now, we're not having the same conversation, to get that under a lease agreement. We are,
Go out to bid for sure.
well, I don't know. Well, I think that's a detail we can work out, He is giving us maintenance of that land for free, which we would have to pay for if he wasn't doing it. So that's worth something,
Right.
so.
Well,
Yeah, is it worth
Hay's
the amount of
okay.
hay that he's getting out of it? I don't know. Like I said, those are details I think we need to work out, but I do think we need to put that to bed as well as this easement thing. So I think that's about all I had, other than, I also agree that there's probably some other opportunities if we can't use those front 12. How long is it gonna take before we can use the gravel pit? I don't know. We should probably get somebody to give us an estimate on that. And then, what are the other options? Bonds, other properties that we already own. I do think it would be a benefit to the town to have that kind of activities going on, but we can't use those hay fields, in my opinion.
Can I ask a couple questions? You mentioned purchase and sales. I have not been able to find that. Can you make a
Mm-hmm. I think that
copy-
is the document that you have.
Can you
No.
make
Yeah,
a
I will.
No,
copy?
the reason why she doesn't have it, it started outside of this town office.
Oh, it did?
So in 2011,
Okay.
the purchase and sales was done with the Russell Foundation. So you're never gonna find any paperwork here in the office.
But I think for public record, for the public who is listening, who has an interest, can we make a copy of that?
Yeah,
So-
I have a copy, I'm looking at a copy, and I guess I think how
Did you
things,
say I had a copy of the?
no,
purchase? Oh.
I don't.
No, I
But these
think that's
here-
what you were looking at, because
these
you said it
here-
was a small document. It's not a large document.
No, what I passed around it.
No, so this
No.
here is just changing it from Alma Schmid
Read
to Ray Banks.
What you're talking about, purchase and sales, is not in the town folder.
No, Mr. McSweeney supplied it via email.
Yeah.
Because it started out at the Russell Foundation.
Okay.
And
So I
at that
got
point
that
when, right, at that point when funding wasn't available and the source was gonna fall through, I'm not sure if it was properly finished at that point, because the purchase and sales, this is my opinion, purchase and sales was done with the Russell Foundation, at which time, when he was not gonna be able to fund it, he should have handed it over to the town in a document form, and we did all the scrambling, which is why you have holes in all your story.
Yeah,
So I
there,
just-
there is a section in there about assigning it to the town
Right, but
square.
did he assign it?
Yeah, I assume they did if they
I-
closed on the purchase.
I
I'm
think
sorry,
part
I
of my-
interrupted you.
Apologize, part of my.
No, I interrupted you,
frustration is
sorry.
I've been here 3 times. I keep hearing about all these documents.
Right.
Nobody's ever, I didn't get that email.
Yeah, I just-
But even
yeah.
the Conservation Commission tonight said we have all sorts of documents. I just handed you tons of documents. Why haven't those documents also been put forth so we can all look at it? So I'm just explaining why I'm a bit frustrated. I do want to say one more time for public record, I do think that there needs to be a clear understanding that money that's in the Conservation Commission, that $180,000, we make it sound like it's not taxpayer dollars. It is. If it wasn't going to the Conservation Commission, it would be coming back to the general budget. It's tax dollars that were deferred because of current use, that when the land comes out of current use, that taxpayer dollar, 25% goes back to the general budget, 75 comes back to the commission. So I just want to make sure when I stated that, I stated it from the perspective, 320,000 or more were taxpayer dollars. Yes, Mildred Hall put in 155, but everything else was taxpayer dollar. Some came from the commission, some came from vote. But I just want to make clear that that when I stated that, I do think I'm stating a clear fact. And, you know, also when I said about conservation, it's not necessarily what we own. It's still a fact that close to a quarter of the land in this town has some kind of restriction on it. So if we want to move forward in a different direction, here's where Parks and Rec stands. I got done saying what the needs are. The gravel bank they've been taking gravel off there for years. It is far from complete. We could go and keep taking gravel off, but we're gonna be 5, 6, 7, 8 years out.
Yeah, I don't know, somebody mentioned maybe we stopped doing that and just use the material to build the rest of the
I mean,
park.
you-
That might be
I
an
believe
option.
You took a walk out there, the rest of
Yeah.
us did. This is
Yeah.
a massive undertaking.
Yes.
So if we choose, Parks and Rec, we can't get money to fix, a local field or the tennis courts or the skateboard park. If we're talking millions of dollars to clear, to level, to put utilities, yes, this is gonna have to be bonded. Do we really think that the town is gonna go for this? I mean, I think that's what we have to think about. Parks and Rec is coming from a perspective of, you came to us because there was a need, and we took and researched that. I think if we decide this can't be used, and I hope it goes for legal opinion, because a lot of things have lapsed, but, we need a solution within the next 1 to 2 years, not 5 to 8. Or there won't be enough field usage in this town for the kids to use. And the fields we have are being destroyed. And we can't even rest a field for a year to help it come back. So there is a critical need. I just want to make sure the select board understands that. There's a critical need, and we can defer it again, but I hope the townspeople who are listening to this speak up, because we've got to find a solution here. And yes, I did hear from these guys to help us buy more land. How much is that gonna cost us? That's the problem, we don't have any money. It would have to go to a warrant, it would have to be bonded. We have a difficulty passing a budget for the school and for the town. And look at Facebook, people aren't happy with the tax bills, so, are they gonna vote in a couple $1 million to purchase land or to do this? And if anybody thinks driving 2-3 miles out on a piece of property that's isolated, I hope the police officers are ready to patrol that every night, because Bolton Field gets locked and it still gets vandalized. So anyways, my 2 cents, but,
Again, I want to thank you for all your hard work.
no, and I appreciate it,
Yeah.
and, we're trying to fix the town's problem.
I think Andy wanted to say something.
So I think, it's a hot topic, and I don't wanna keep kicking the can down the road. We gotta let the chief up here sooner or later. I think we need to ask legal, I guess I don't know the question, but where does it stand?
I
What
wrote
can
down
be
3
done?
questions.
Okay.
In legal's opinion, what is the state of that warrant article with regards to December 31st, 2018 lapsing? Did any or all of it lapse? Given the answer to that question, who has management of that property? And did that property ever get properly assigned to the town?
Yeah. I would recommend that we sit down with the Conservation Commission and get their ideas of what they want to ask legal as well. I think they sent us something last night or
Yep.
Sunday night as well.
Maybe it
And-
would be nice if we had conservation and selectmen here at a meeting.
Exactly.
And had Laura come in.
So we're gonna have to
Yeah,
make a
something.
decision sooner than that. Can't they just email us questions?
Probably.
So, they did.
They did.
Okay, my bad.
Well, they emailed questions, but they emailed a demand to make a phone call, so we can't sit in on the phone call.
But they did email us questions.
Right, which, you're on a fact finding for number 1. Right, you're on fact finding for Elmer Schmidt, that's the first one.
And, yeah, I guess I'll just read the whole thing, or, okay, with me reading that. So, and this was sent to Chairman Hippler. It's 3 topics, but we're focused on topic number 1 right now. And this, again, is from the Conservation Commission, written by Chair Andy Fulton. So, by a unanimous 7-0-0 vote of the Conservation Commission at our November 15th, 2023 meeting, we formally request support of Town Council to render legal opinions and/or offer remedies regarding the following items. All right, so number 1, the Banks-Schmid property ball fields development proposal by the Parks and Rec Commission. We need Laura to broaden her research into this contested proposal to include more than just the warrant article language and whether there is a conservation easement on the property. We knew that the conservation easement requirement was never taken up and worked on by the Selectmen. We need her to review records such as minutes of the public hearing regarding the Conservation Commission's expenditure of $180,000 from the Conservation Fund and the public hearing regarding the Mildred Hall Trust Fund expenditure toward purchase of the Banks-Schmid property. We do not believe Town Council has been afforded the opportunity to evaluate and understand the fullness of the contested development proposal. The purpose of this legal assistance is to assess whether it is lawful to repurpose lands bought with monies from the Conservation Fund to build active recreation facilities, including parking lots and the other attributes of a sports complex. So, we have those asks as well. I guess, would you, if you don't mind me, would you amend those at all, given what we talked about? Or do you have like a bullet point or 2, if we're just gonna be passing some questions along?
Salem, I presume you're addressing me on that?
Yeah, sorry.
I would leave those as is, because that's what was voted on at
Yeah,
commission meeting.
that's fair.
So I wouldn't want to amend those without reconvening the commission and passing along the will of the commission. In the general concept, I think, actually, let me go on the positive here. I think that encapsulates the gist of our request and what we would find, valuable interaction with legal counsel to be.
So I'm of the opinion that I read off 3, I don't know, we haven't really talked about, if anybody has a different opinion, I would send those 3 and/or modifications or more, and we can just copy and paste that one.
I just need to have a better clarify. I couldn't write as fast as you could read the 3.
Okay, I wrote, did the warrant article lapse? And given the answer to that question, who gets to manage that property in its current state? And the result of that may be it's totally in conservation's hands. And finally, did the property get assigned to the town? Which hopefully that's an easy one. And hopefully the answer is
Well,
yes.
I was gonna say, I think that's an easy one.
I would probably just amend that to, did the easement lapse to any or all of it lapse? Because I do think, again, as I stated earlier, it's only the funding that I believe lapsed. So not did the article itself lapse, but did any or any part of it?
Thank you. Regarding our request for a conversation, I'll back that up firmly. I believe getting a written question to our town attorney would be the way to start things. But we have, both myself and Vice Chair Nager have spoken with Laura before, and you get so much more in a short use of her time out of a conversation rather than iterations going back and forth, on a written, by email or otherwise. So all the request is that as we used to be allowed to talk to Laura, couldn't we have the respect of that opportunity so that we can handle, the secondary questions that come out of the answer, rather than
When
going
is your
back
next
and forth in an iteration?
When is your next meeting?
Third meeting in December.
Second
Third
Wednesday,
Wednesday.
Second.
second Wednesday in December,
So you've got a few weeks.
yeah.
guess
I
we
have
could
no problem
come
with
out-
it.
Come see what,
Like,
I mean, we can see what comes
'cause
out of
we're gonna
the,
meet before you guys meet. That's where I was going with this. So hopefully we will have heard back before, and there will be an opportunity where we'll be able to meet and say, okay, great, this is slam dunk, hand it off to you guys to talk to her. Between now and instead of making a decision right now, we'll see what comes back, and then say, okay, great, there's some clarity, go for it.
Really, the pressure's on you guys, because you've got to do the warrant in a certain time frame. So that's yours to figure out what, whether it fits and what fits, and so as much as we can make ourselves available to either express our concern or to answer a question we want to, we can even do that in a special meeting. We have an alternate now. We have a full slate of commissioners now, so, our ability to operate is typically increased when we have more members. So, special meetings have been done before, and they can be done again, just as long as we properly post them and keep it all above board.
But if you start with the letter and your 3 questions, you'd have an answer by Monday. That would be a start.
Right, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the answer may be, oh, this is very clear, we know what to do, or maybe it's not quite clear.
Correct.
and if they get an answer, we'll make sure we have the topic to discuss as a board. I want to put out there publicly, because I know there's a lot of passion for the townspeople, but it isn't that the Board of Selectmen thinks that we do or do not need this, so we really appreciate opinions, but it's not like having 300 people in here. We didn't say yes, no to start with, we just asked for facts. You don't need to convince us if there's a need for it. We just are trying to learn if it legally can be done first, and then we'll move on from
Yeah,
there.
and I think we all agree that the ball got dropped. We just
Yeah.
need to know what we do to pick the ball up and finish.
Right.
Because the taxpayers expected an end result and we don't have it.
Right. So,
Could you keep Parks and Rec in the loop because, on these meetings, and just so we know somebody could attend just for an educational perspective? Is there any reason we couldn't
yeah, well, that's
be at
fine.
these meetings?
Hopefully, yeah.
Because I know it sounds like documents have gone back and forth. I tried to CC the Conservation Commission on everything I send you guys, but I know I'm not seeing things that are getting sent to you. Not that I should, but as I'm doing the research, it's been difficult if I don't see everything.
You can have these back.
You
This
guys
is
see?
just changing it from
Yeah,
to the trust.
just, Andy and I have been around for a while. I know, the Board of Selectmen changed a lot, but I just want to say, as far as Selectman Bloom looking at whether this lapsed or not, I don't think it matters. We have there was a warrant article that authorized Conservation Commission to convey easements on any of the town forests or conservation lands, and it's just an open-ended warrant article. And so if we want to just do the right thing and convey an easement and, like Selectman Matthews said, if you guys are telling us to do that, we can definitely get the ball rolling on that. We'll have to see what it costs and talk to the Forest Society and so on. But so that's the problem with just like, it's kind of frustrating. I know you're trying to control legal costs and all, but kind of go around in circles and things get missed, because no one would say, oh yeah, I know about this warrant article that was done, whatever year it was, that authorizes us to convey that, we know that. So it doesn't matter that part of it, if you just want to do the right thing and do what we promised and, convey an easement on everything except for the 20 acres, we don't have to go back and do a new warrant article. It doesn't matter if it lapses. There's another article. So, you could show Laura that other article just to make sure she agrees. We can dig that out for you, but,
That's good information.
yeah, it's stuff like that, so I think, we made the purchase, and the screwy thing was, back in the minutes, you'll see where I had the concern about, we weren't doing what the warrant article said. The warrant article was scrapped. I never saw the legal opinion, but in a set of minutes, specifically, I said, someone ought to get a legal opinion to make sure that this is even legal, because we're not doing what we voted on at all. We pumped the dollar amount way up, so it's just a messed up project, and I think we're trying to fix it now.
Yep.
So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, I guess we'll go from there on that.
Yeah.
Chief Moore.
Still awake over there, Chief?
Yep, so,
Okay.
since I do the PowerPoint, I'm gonna move this out of the way just in case anybody's home viewing or wants to view at a later date. But I put this presentation online, it's available on the police department's website. Go to the chief tab, you'll see a budget, click on the budget 2024. All right. Whoops. So I just always kind of include this just to give a little perspective. Everybody always wants to know where their taxes go, rightfully so. Police department accounted for less than 4.2% of your overall taxes. For the town portion collected, which was in 2022, $3.05, we were 24% of that. And we were 73 cents of your total tax rate. This year, we were very successful in seeking and obtaining grants. We're still waiting on one. If that grant is successful, that's the APHIS grant. We still have to wait for it to be posted for 2 weeks. I thought that was tonight, but we still have to get it posted so we can have a public meeting on it. That's a $20,000 grant. But we would have obtained $135,095 in grant funding.
And the APHIS is the only one that hasn't been accepted yet?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's what's accepted. Some of those, we didn't fulfill all of our obligation to the grant. For example, when we do dam patrols, obviously calls for service take priority, so if we're not available to do a dam patrol, we skip it. So we actually do about 60 to 70% of our dam patrols, just for that example. Salary and benefits. Since I've been here, the salary and benefits have ranged from 80.67% to 86.4%. Next year, it'll be 85.4% of my budget, so that's a huge number. From 2020 to 2024, inflation has or is projected to rise 20.73%. Salary and benefits during that time have risen just slightly above by 0.5%, 21.29%. We still have to remain competitive with outside agencies. I didn't really put any slides in, but last year we were seeing top end bonuses of $20,000. That's now up to $30,000 to get a certified officer. There are multiple agencies throughout the state, none quite near us, which are going to hit ranges of $90,000 for officers topping out. So pay is really going. We haven't seen the resurgence of people wanting to do this job. So it's very competitive to attract and retain personnel. But as you can see, when inflation went up 20.73%, my departmental expenses, which is what I'm going to go over in here, have only gone up 11.87% during that period. So we're 8.86% short of maintaining what I had monetary value, my buying power. That equates to about $23,000. I didn't count the prosecutor service line because that used to be contractual, so I took that out just to keep it proportional with the comparisons. All right, so looking at line 253, I'll just go quick on the ones from no change. Prosecutorial evidence collection, no change. And from those who haven't seen this before, I kind of put what we typically use these lines for. Record storage, no change. However, this line will be going away in about 2 years. We're still doing work downstairs to the storage area. We've got just boxes stacked on top of another. We're looking to get a little bit better of a storage system where we can actually stack the box on shelves. Once we complete that, it should be about $2,000 worth, we'll get rid of this line. Prosecutor services, so I'm going to talk about this later because we've been watching something, and it is going to affect January 1st, so I'll hit this on a different slide. We did increase it this past year because our administrative assistant, with the Board of Selectmen approval, we increased it by $1,800 just because she does all discovery now. Police telephone, line 256, no change. Dispatch was a contractual increase, so the difference was, $2,500 roughly. Police recruitment, slight increase. My background investigations went up by $100 per investigation. This line, I typically budget for having to hire 3 non-certified officers, what it would actually cost. So that's where I base this on. Accreditation. So we used to be accredited with CALEA, a national organization. New Hampshire has adopted a process for obtaining state accreditation. It's run through the academy. They mirrored Massachusetts, and the goal was to get accredited while keeping costs low. So the total proposal of $3,500 a year would be for the annual accreditation fee, a third-party vendor to update our policies and make sure we maintain compliance, and Power DMS, which is the software package which it takes for this. There are no on-site assessments, which saves a ton of money. CALEA, that was a requirement, and that was probably a $10,000 expense just by itself. Everything's done online now. Building maintenance, increase of $750 just because all of my vendor fees are going up. When I first started here in 2019, I really didn't see service charges or, fuel surplus charges or anything like that. They are just crazy right now. But yeah, $750 what I'm recommending we increase that by. Evidence recovery storage, this is an increase, and the vendor we use is still the lowest cost in the town. We rent 2 bays. One is for a vehicle in case we need to store a vehicle there for search warrant purposes. The other one is for large equipment because we have pretty much a slightly large closet for all of our evidence. That fee has gone up probably 5 times in the last 2.5 years. I've been talking to the fire chief, and he's looking at maybe building a new East Station down the road. We'd have 2 sides of the building, a fire department side and a police department side. The police department side we could use for all of our storage in our bay. He thinks it would be about $150,000, so it's just kind of a long-term vision right now. If you do if you take what we're paying on that for 30 years, that pretty much pays for the East Ware Station. So just kind of a long-term vision, going to be spearheaded by the fire department. Police training, no change. This is a great line. This really helps with retention and recruitment. This is kind of one of the points I emphasize when we're looking at getting people. Printing, no change. Police dues, it was just $250 increase just because we had one additional membership. Police mileage reimbursement, no change. Rubbish removal, no change. Cleaning services, no change. Building janitorial supplies, no change. Makes it kind of easy. Police supplies, so increase, you've heard me repeatedly at the end of year purchases, ammunition's gone up, ammunition's gone up. Just increasing $1,000 to help compensate. Obviously, we have to shoot a minimum of 2 times a year. Anytime we get another officer, we have to qualify them. It's all state mandates. We don't really do too much beyond that. But yeah, just ammunition costs gone up.
How much have you spent to date out of that?
Nothing yet. We usually make all of our ammunition purchases based on the end of the year. So I'll look at 3 different accounts to see where I can get funding from. 2 of them are pretty much gone. And then I'll ask if we can't fund it in what we have left in those 3 lines, I'll ask the board for an end of year purchase approval. Last year, I think I did 5,000 if I'm not mistaken. And we're pretty much going to be right on there again this year from what I'm seeing. Police taser equipment, so same thing, tasers, body worn cameras, and ballistic equipment are my 3 biggest expenses, which aren't in the budget. The numbers are the same. They haven't gone up, but this is to fund our these are the batteries and our cartridges. This is the line for anything that attaches to the taser, not the taser apparatus itself. That's a separate line. This is the taser line. It's for 3 tasers. Everything I do is based on life cycle management. We have 12 full-time officers and 2 part-time officers, so that's 14. I use a 15 just because it divides into 5, since the life cycle on these is 5. Taser provides $10 million liability insurance policy for tasers under contract, and they flat out tell you these are good for 5 years. Anything that happens, if you have a malfunction before 5 years, you're on your own. You know, when you're, oh yeah, it's right in that little flyer on the right side. Yeah, so.
You have a problem after the 5
You
years.
mean after?
Yeah, after.
That's why
What'd I
said
say?
it before.
Before.
Oh,
I'm
sorry,
going-
yeah.
That's why I did that.
Just kind of throw the BS flag on me. Hell, this folk. Yeah, so after, sorry, if you keep them past the 5 years, that's when they're not going to back them up. Line 273, radio maintenance contract, no change. This is R&R Communications. Body worn cameras, again, we have partial funding in this line. And this is just for the licensing media storage for 15 body worn cameras. It doesn't include the equipment. Police and computer equipment. So this was a pretty good expense. Prior, whenever you bought a computer, you got the license for all your Microsoft Office products. Now they do it by the individual. So my costs just went way up, as you can see, because now I have to pay for each individual officer to have all those licenses, because we're very computer dependent. I looked at how much paper we order on the department. We produce 44,000 documents a year, either by copies or reports or what have you. So that tells you how much we do in computers. So everybody has the office products of Word and Excel, very heavy use. I use more of the PowerPoint version, but we hit it all. Obviously, if you follow us on Facebook, you see kind of we do that on the office, and then we put it on Facebook. So very heavily dependent on it. Again, body worn camera, this is the actual equipment. We budget for 3 cameras and 1 docking bay a year.
I've seen like 3 in a row says it's never fully funded, so where were they funded out of?
So this one started out, whoops, that was before my time. That has already, the 2486 has always been in the budget. For 4 years now, I've tried to get it fully funded, and the board took it out last year. miscommunication.
Okay.
I think I was on office equipment, but no change. Office supplies, no change. IMC server maintenance, so I'd watched that line for 3 years because it was a very specific amount. And I finally lowered it last year, and then both of them raised their fees, so $421 increase. That was a Murphy's Law line. Photocopier services, they went up $215, so a slight increase. Police postage, no change. And just to let you know, I do have a summary slide in the back of where the big increases are. So, police fuel vehicles, obviously the estimated rate per gallon is set by the board. And we did project an increased fuel consumption just because we're almost fully staffed. We have one vacancy. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, last year we were estimated to use 7,000 gallons. Now it's 7,900 gallons annually. Police safety medical gear, no change. Vehicle repairs, so down bottom, that should remind you of 2016 because that was also a picture of one of the fleet vehicles. I'm recommending this go up 4,000, and I think we're going to spend way over that keeping these Dodges on the road. We haven't adopted a life cycle management program, which would just be one vehicle a year. I'm definitely seeing my repair cost increasing, particularly with the Dodges. And I still have to get at least 4 years out of them, even with one vehicle a year, not counting my grant vehicle. Some of the major repairs we've done just this year: struts, brakes, lights, sway bar, undercarriage, radiator, exhaust, electronics. But they're averaging $3,900 year to date for each of my three 2017 Dodges. My 2018 is $1,200. I budget about $1,450 per car for a year. So I'm almost, but I do have two accounts, so one's a maintenance account.
So how's it work when, like, I've seen these vehicles down at DPW, like, they work on them when they can. I think less so now than they used to be able to. So is there any money exchange between departments for any of that? Okay.
No, we usually, if we have something, we'll call Jason to see, hey, is this within your skill set to fix, and do you have the time? But like, so, and this is just kind of the weird thing. I did my three 2017 Dodges oil changes, and we used Napa to get, same car, and I had 3 different invoices with 3 different amounts, which made no sense. But what they were charging for 2 of just the oil and filter was less than what Mark Phillips would charge us. So it was cheaper to go to Mark Phillips for oil change. So we hit stuff like that every now and then, but we usually check with DPW first just to see availability, cost-wise, but some things just don't work out.
Are you using Mobile One?
I've seen them use all kind of different brands.
Well, I mean, that's 5,000 mile. You wouldn't have to change.
I'm pretty sure we changed them before 5,000 miles.
Yeah, well, with Mobile One, that says synthetic, you wouldn't have to change them as often.
Anybody makes synthetic.
Yeah, they do get synthetic,
Yeah.
but I'm pretty sure it's Napa brands, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Police maintenance and tires, this is the other line. This is also $1,450 per car. We get 4 oil changes annually in the patrol vehicles. The command vehicles are, I think, are three times a year. We undercoat them. Of course, registration, inspection fees, and tires are a big thing.
You do a set of tires a year, on average?
So we used to do, yeah, pretty much. We had summers and winters, but now Firestone is making an all-season tire that really works well for the Dodges. So, yeah, we're replacing them once a year, and they're about $600 on the Dodges for a set of tires. Which is good, because it was $80 to change your tires out every time, so it saved us a little money.
Right.
Communications equipment, so no change. We buy 1 radio a year. Defensive force equipment training, no change. Juvenile diversion projects, no change. Uniform maintenance, dry cleaning, no change. Officer uniform equipment, no change. This is my other line that we haven't got to where it needs to be, police ballistic equipment. Again, this is my helmets, my vests, my trauma plates, We carry a shield in the vehicles. I've got a budget of $1,760. One vest is about $1,450, $1,500. So, and I've got to get 3 a year because they only have a life cycle of 5 years. So obviously this is way underfunded.
Was this something that historically you've been blowing out of the water budget-wise?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we have to get, especially with the high, like, if I'm not mistaken, last year we had 6 vests we had to get just because of the turnover rates and then people who their vests were expiring. You know, that's,
What do you do with the one you mentioned having, you can't reuse them? So what if
No.
they're still in the allotted time, but they don't fit? What do you do with those?
they're in the closet. So if we have a ride-along, you know, we haven't signed a liability waiver, but we'll offer them those vests if they want to wear them. But yeah, they are fit to the person. They have a stand-up, sit-down, measure them out. You can't reuse them for other people. We got lucky with Seth. We still had his vest when he came back, so we didn't have to order him another one.
Can those be sold?
No, they're for the person.
Okay.
Yeah, that's,
Not even
that's
like,
some huge liability.
you know, somebody off the street signs a waiver, buys a vest for
You trying to rob
not
a
short
bank?
money. You never know.
Just going to Manchester on the weekend.
I know, huh? Yeah, maybe that's it.
Trying to go shopping.
Do
No.
Christmas shopping.
Yeah, I've never heard of anybody trying to sell vests.
Okay.
Just because they have a life cycle of 5 years anyway.
It'll be a
anyway.
trailblazer?
No.
What about recertification?
I like
Can
my
we-
house.
Can we get them tested to see if they're still good by,
Well, they're still gonna be good with, after 5 years?
yeah?
That comes from the manufacturer. It's from them sitting in the sunlight and being exposed to elements, the fabric starts to break down, from my understanding.
It's a lot like logging helmets are the same thing. They're
Yeah.
5 years, and if you get cracked after that, you didn't replace it's on you.
Yeah. Like, now Trauma Place, if they're ceramic, the vet here in town does us a favor and they'll x-ray them for cracks, because if they're cracked, they're no good. But again, those are 5 years, if they're ceramic. The ones currently aren't ceramic. Uniform allowance, no change. Grant reimbursement, no line. So if I'm fully staffed, I won't have a funding source available for grants. And as you guys know, when we go for this equipment, usually we have a town match of 25%. So this just gives us a place where we know where the 25% is coming from, rather than hoping we have a vacancy. Anybody got a question on that one? Since that's kind of, and I just put 5,000 in there. That would give us $20,000 worth of grants.
How does that compare to what you did this past year? Would that have gotten you everything that was on your
Yes.
first sheet?
Yeah, we were nowhere close to that. I want to say our match was 3,000 or 4,000. Because most of ours our match is either contributed by the use of our equipment, our time processing the accounts. The only real match we had to do for equipment was that speed equipment. And I want to say we weren't even 3,000. We were like 2,500 if I'm not mistaken. There is no match for the Tahoe we're getting. So yeah, we did pretty good. So that, yeah, 3,000 would have been more than enough. Or 5,000 would have been more than enough. Like I said, here's a slide of the summary of significant increases. It's just summary. I don't need to go over them again since you heard them all. But I did put, so the increases we kind of have to have, just to existing accounts, it totaled $30,835. It represented 1.6% of my budget. We had that new Microsoft licensing fee, which was a $3,870 increase, 0.02% of my budget. And then recommended increases, which were state accreditation, the $1,000 for increasing ammunition, and the $4,000 for repairs to vehicle, which was just short of $8,500, and that's 0.04%. So total significant increases was 1.66% of my overall budget, you know, and the inflation rate is 3.4% projected, I believe. So we did what we could. Animal control budget, this one's going to be pretty easy. The only thing that changed is the gas line. No change to professional services. No change to electricity. Meetings, seminars, no change. No change to supplies. And like I said, gas, just because now that we have an ACO projected to use 100 gallons, $4 a gallon. so a slight increase. Safety medical gear, no change. Vehicle maintenance repairs, no change. And shelter maintenance, no change. It's closed. And that's it for my budget. I've got 3 warrant articles to discuss, if y'all are ready for those. All right, so first warrant article was the vehicle that was presented to the CIP. The project cost was $84,190. It's for a fully upfit patrol vehicle with all new equipment. That's what that cost is based on. So we always look at strategies to reduce the cost. We can reuse a radar. It'll save approximately $2,500, maybe a little bit more, but I projected $2,500 at a minimum. That brings the cost down to $81,690. With the board approval, we can use funds from the police detail account and apply $19,000 out of that. That'll bring it down to $62,690. Everett Dam patrols, we can apply $16,000 out of that, which will bring the cost down to $46,690. And I will have adequate end-of-year funding if the board approves applying $46,690 for no cost to this warrant article. But that's all board, you guys have to approve the line. This is just options for you. Beth and I have been working on a revolving fund warrant article. I talked to the town attorney probably 2 years ago because we have trouble administering the current revolving fund. There was so much public comment, it's convoluted, and we can't tell, or according to the town attorney, it can't be definitively identified how the town intended for the current warrant article to be used. So that warrant article still, or the current fund would still stay in place, but it's just used to pay the employees out of. But we need a new revolving fund for the actual equipment. And there's a key part of this. Shall the town vote to establish a public, and this is, you can adjust this obviously, this is just a suggestion. We researched other towns, what they did, but shall the town vote to establish a public safety services revolving fund pursuant to RSA 3195H, item C, for the purpose of purchasing, outfitting, and maintaining police vehicles and other safety equipment as needed. Funding for this revolving fund will come from grants, forfeitures. We don't currently have a place to put forfeiture funds. We probably have forfeiture funds coming. I can't go into more detail because it's an ongoing case.
That's what I was gonna ask about.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Is it a,
I can't give anything else away because it's an ongoing case.
like, is it civil asset forfeiture?
Could be.
Okay.
It's nowhere close to being obtained. But yeah, I'll just leave it like that. But obviously, if we get it, we need a place to put that funding because there are specific uses. You can't just go out and buy whatever you want. Like I was in charge of the training funds, which came from forfeiture funds in my old department, and there's only specific things you can use those funds for. And cruiser detail fees collected from private details. But it pretty much, to you, it goes in the general funds. I'm sorry, I'll just read it. Furthermore, to extract the existing cruiser fees from the police special detail revolving fund and deposit the fees into this newly established public safety services revolving fund, the money in the fund shall be allowed to accumulate from year to year and shall not be considered part of the town's general fund unreserved fund balance. The town treasurer shall have custody of all the monies in the fund and shall pay out only after a request from the chief of police and approval from the board of selectmen. So that's just our early attempt for your consideration.
So the police special detail revolving fund is the existing fund that you were talking about before you started?
Yes.
Okay.
And the intent would be, I heard you say for equipment, but what type of equipment? Vehicles or maintaining them?
So ideally, we can
Does
use
say
it to offset the cost of vehicles when we're purchasing. So we just saw the warrant article for the current cruiser was $84,160. We can determine what percentage we use the details, or the vehicles for details for, come up with a number and apply that to offsetting the cost to reduce the tax impact for additional
To
vehicles.
me, those are two kind of, well, at least I was always made to operate kind of different categories. If you take the money to buy a new radio because it broke, versus applying it for a vehicle.
Yep.
To me, applying a vehicle might, I suppose doesn't legally have to, but should go to townspeople to approve, to purchase a vehicle, I would think.
Yep. Yeah, it's just offset, and we did other safety equipment, because obviously you have the
Sure.
lights on the vehicle, the siren, and anything else attached. But yeah, primary, obviously it would take your approval, so whatever
Okay,
idea I would come up with, it'd still have Board of Selectmen oversight.
okay.
But it's really gonna be set up like they do with the ambulance fund.
Hopefully. But I mean, we'll never be that successful.
No, but
Yeah, but I mean, we'll be able to offset some.
Part of
year-
it,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
But that's gotta go by vote of townspeople.
Yes, yes.
Not
Yeah,
not just approval of this board.
it's
The
gonna
transfer
go,
station and the fire department has to be voted with.
Correct, yeah.
Is there a
So-
dollar amount on that, or is that just period?
They have special revenue funds. This is the revolving fund. So for
Revolving
capital
fund, my
projects,
bad.
yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Department heads usually go to the voters for capital projects,
Right,
like a
revolving,
cruiser.
right. Okay,
But you can offset the cruiser with funds from this fund.
right, all right, yep.
Okay.
No, sorry, yep,
Yes,
go
Can
ahead.
you elaborate on the cruiser detail fees collected from private details?
Yeah, so anytime they work a detail, we get $20 per hour that the vehicle is used. That currently goes into,
The lost special
Yeah.
detail revolving fund.
there you go, the other fund. And like I said, the town attorney said that's so convoluted, that's why I haven't been able to offer those funds in prior years. This year, based on what she told me, I was able to figure out I could have offset up to 34,000 since 2014. That's how much we've used the vehicles. There isn't that much in that account,
So
So
with
is
the
the-
vehicle warrant article, is that gonna drain the fund completely?
not completely, because officers are still paid out of that account, so we leave a little bit in that fund, so it's not coming out of town funds to pay officers for details, because we have to wait on reimbursement for the vendor.
Okay, so you're gonna be changing the initial fund just for labor, basically?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And so you had specified cruiser detail fees collected from private details. Are there other fees that come from private details?
No,
Okay.
no, it's all private details.
But it's, the only fees that come from private details are cruiser fees?
Well, no, the officer gets paid
Sure.
too, yeah,
Yeah.
and retirement
Like,
and everything.
but coming
like-
into the department?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, as far as equipment, yes.
Yeah, okay.
There is also a admin fee, which is 29 cents or
Yes,
something.
pennies of-
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
That's
not
the one we
much.
talked about earlier this year?
or last,
Probably,
yeah.
Okay.
That rate.
yes. Any other questions?
Just to summarize, to set up the revolving fund, there's no tax impact to do that?
No.
There's no tax impact to change the other fund to only accrue labor?
No, the
Okay.
special detail revolving fund, he's not proposing to change it. It's
But you're gonna
stay the
change
same.
what goes into it?
Correct.
Yeah. But there's no tax impact on either of those actions? Okay.
All right, so prosecutor, so we've been watching this for a while because we've been warned about it. And they are actually taking action. The court has informed our prosecutor. January 1st, 2024, they're going to stop felonies first. Arraignments are now going to be scheduled every Thursday. Currently, we only had 1 to 2 a month. Trial management conferences are going to be scheduled Tuesdays. That's going to be a significant increase. And pre-trial conferences are going to be scheduled Wednesdays, which will probably be 1 to 2 times a month. Court time for the prosecutor is going to significantly increase, and I'm estimating between 12 and 18,000 in his overtime alone. And that's not counting if he was the only one working for some reason. Now we have shift coverage on top of that. Currently in line 255, I have 13,250, which can be used to offset this. But we're going to have to sit down, I'll as we keep getting more information, because we just got this about a week and a half ago, I'm going to have to give you guys as much information as I can to try to get a warrant article together and probably look at a attorney to be the prosecutor again. I wasn't, I was comfortable when we had in-house prosecutors because we had, Officer Perslow, who was seeking a law degree, and she did an excellent job as prosecutor. And then we had Sergeant Montplaisir as backup because he's very well versed in court procedures. Of course, she left to pursue her, her final bar on her law degree, and he stepped in, so we really don't have a backup yet. We have somebody who would probably be very good at it, but that's several years down the road. So we're kind of vulnerable in this area if something did happen to Sergeant Montplaisir. We'd be up the creek without a paddle. So.
Does that take away from Goffstown that you're doing with him now?
Yes, yeah. So currently Goffstown, we pay the prosecutor of Goffstown $6,000 of that $13,250. Sergeant Montplaisir gets $6,000 of the $13,250, and the other $1250 is for hourly rates in case the Goffstown prosecutor has to do hourly work. If we have a conflict or something. So that entire line can go away. Emily would maintain.
So the 6,000, that's just an annual salary for doing that?
Stipend.
Stipend
Yes.
rate.
Yeah, stipend. Just like FTO, where we came up with that, is that's what FTOs would get paid if they trained the entire year. So we wanted to keep it kind of consistent.
Doesn't matter how many times that individual goes to court or how
No,
much time he spends on that, it's the $6,000 a year.
Yeah, and if he still goes to court on his time off, he still gets overtime. That was manageable before because he might switch a shift now, but now he's looking at pretty much being in court Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of almost every week. So even if I have him Sunday through Wednesday, he's still going to be in court overtime one day a week, or if he works Wednesday to Saturday, he's still going to be there on Tuesdays. And that's not to mention, just to give you an idea of the kind of numbers we're talking. So this year to date, we've had 178 felony charges, 310 misdemeanor charges, 191 violations, and 314 traffic tickets. So it's quite a bit of work that these guys have produced, which takes every one of those cases has to go through the court system, either pre-trial, trial, or what have you. So it's a big responsibility.
How do we compare to other nearby towns? Because everybody's going to have to deal with this change.
Yeah.
So how are they currently set up, and how are they, what's the chatter right now?
So I haven't really got that because this is so new. I don't know how the other chiefs are adjusting. Goffstown obviously has their own attorney, prosecutor. Several other departments around us partner with each other to hire one prosecutor, and that individual will work for multiple towns. If the board decides we should look at this, who I was going to contact is Jesse Renault Smith, who used to be the prosecutor for Laconia, if I'm not mistaken. He took a state job. But I'm going to see if he knows anybody who might be interested in what kind of availability they might have. Our last prosecutor was getting paid $78,000. I don't know where that, I don't know a pay study. I don't know where that compares to what we're looking at. Hopefully we can partner with other towns to get somebody where we can pay a portion, they can pay a portion. So yeah, this is just coming up on the radar, so we'll be scrambling.
So at this point, what is the number that you're asking for? You don't know yet.
I don't really know yet. My next step is probably to contact Jesse, see if he knows anybody, and just kind of
Put feelers
see put feelers out to see what people might be thinking. I'm hoping I can keep it significantly below 78,000, obviously. Especially if we can partner with another town or two. I know Dunbarton uses Concord's prosecutor, so they're not an option. Henniker's in a different court system. Goffstown has their own. New Boston has their own sergeant who does it. So, as far as local agencies, we don't have a lot to compare to.
What about Hillsborough?
Hillsborough, is that our county or is that Merrimack?
It's our county.
It's ours.
Is it?
Yeah,
Yeah, I would see what they're doing because they're pretty good.
yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll put feelers out, see what and I'll give you all more information hopefully in the near future as we're moving forward.
Ask a couple of questions for Finance Committee.
Sure.
First of all, you had things like tasers, you said you never budgeted?
I put them in the budget and they were pulled out last year. miscommunication.
In the past, I think they had been, so when they weren't budgeted, but you still needed them, that means you had to take from other places in your budget in order to buy tasers.
End-of-year funds, they've always come out of, ballistic equipment, tasers, and body-worn cameras have always been end-of-year funds because we've always had vacancies.
And I don't understand what you're asking for with the warrant article on the prosecutor. Are you asking to finance a full-time prosecutor?
I don't know if it's gonna be full-time or or part-time. It's infancy stages is where we're at. Obviously, this is coming, the court's already said this is gonna be effective January 2024, so now we're scrambling. We were kinda getting word of this 3-4 months ago, but we really didn't think it would happen, and it did.
This is an opinion, but it relates to finances, if I may, because you have had a salaried prosecutor in the past. I'm not sure that you need, in my opinion, a warrant article to fill that position. You just have to reinstate it. Just something to talk about,
Okay.
because I don't think that would be necessary. I think that's a problem that happened like in the building inspector. You went to part-time, and then you needed a full-time. To put on the warrant article was defeated.
Makes sense.
Whereas, should be building inspector, he was here full-time, just replace the position, just a thought.
No, appreciate it. That's a good thought. Yeah, I was like, I wasn't here when the last prosecutor was hired, so I wasn't sure what process they used to obtain one. But thank you. Any other questions about that?
Any questions from the board on anything Chief presented? We're gonna see it a few more times, I'm sure.
Yep, I did have a question on the police dispatch. You said it was a contractual increase,
Correct.
and when was that contract actually approved, do you know?
2 years, we're on our 3rd year?
Yeah, or last year, 2024 will be the last year.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Okay. Couple other items.
Couple other items,
Yep, so
that's all on my paper.
camera systems.
All right,
So camera systems, we ended up getting 3 bid, six companies expressed interest, so that was a pretty good, short-term, interest, but we got 3 bids. Your Electronic Systems in Ware, Arcom Communications in Hillsborough, and One Source Security in Merrimack. The bids range from 20 to 26,000. We'll be comparing and evaluating bids over the next 2 days. Is there a board representative who has experience in this area who would like to join us for those evaluations?
not me. I don't know.
Bueller?
If
you can,
It's
if you
gotta
can.
be before Wednesday.
Yeah, we'll try to, same here. Yeah, I go to a conference this weekend, but we'll try to summarize it, and we're gonna look to make sure apples are apples, and just, if you could bruise it, that would be greatly appreciated.
That's fine.
And if so, we'll make it happen. Board's good with that direction?
I guess, does everybody,
To look over them, right? It doesn't mean that then he's gonna say.
All y'all are
"Oh,
welcome to look at it, I can,
I don't know.
they're here.
Just saying, we're approving him to look at it, not then
Right.
for the chief to
just
say
wanna
this.
make sure
Right,
we're all on the same page.
They're big, they're like,
right, chief, we understand that. We're approving him to
Just
look
look,
at it.
just look.
That doesn't mean he says, yeah, I like this one, and you call and order him tomorrow before the next.
well,
meeting.
so the authority still rests with me under the emergency purchase procedure.
Remember, he's taking it out of his year-end budget, so you gotta
Yep.
give him a few more weeks to wait anyway.
Right, when we haven't approved that yet, right?
That's right.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it doesn't take that. I can go get an emergency, that's not how the policy reads. It's emergency purchase order. Comes under my authority, I'll have it in my bottom line budget.
We don't approve the expenditure of Indian money for that?
Nope, not under the purchasing policy.
Okay.
I can
Right
send it to
now,
you.
right now, we're just asking Salem
Got
to
it,
overlook
we've got it
everything.
right here.
Yep,
I think
Yes.
it's number 6. Am I right?
Yeah,
See, I memorized them.
and then it was towards the end, the emergency.
I think he's right, he has the obligation, but you guys are in charge still. Because we're a bottom line townwide. Which was why you were waiting till the end of the year.
No,
No,
I was just doing out of,
no, I think it
Good
just happened to
faith.
be timing.
yeah, I was just doing it out of good faith.
Good thing you got good faith. Good thing you got good faith.
That
No,
could be,
policy's pretty easy to read.
that could be some vague, huh?
I can go read you exactly what I'm looking at, if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, it's an emergency purchase may be made by a department head only if the normal operations of the department are in jeopardy. This shall generally mean or relate to emergency repairs to equipment or facilities which may be kept operating to protect the health and or safety of persons or property.
And that's it.
Which,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before
Yep.
with you,
Yeah.
like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we were all cool with it.
Yep.
Right.
So he can just go and do it?
That's how the purchasing policy reads.
I'm just asking the question.
I guess if that's our category, I mean, that's some open-ended. Boy, about anybody could say that it's an emergency for the building.
It has to be, safety related.
The board made me go out to bid on a sewer pump for the center of town,
That was kind of a safety issue.
so. I mean, I guess that's what
Yeah,
the policy
that would be
is, that's
helpful.
that, but. So would your intent to be to come back to us with what yours and possibly Salem's recommendation of that would be for a company?
No. Just because it's a safety issue.
How long have they been down?
Couple of
Since
years?
June, yeah, no, since like June, I brought it to the board's attention in June, and was told it had to be an end-of-year purchase, and then after I went to CIP the first time, the policy came to my attention, and I have the authority to make it, which I'm going to do.
We might want to look at that only for the mere fact that anybody can make a anybody can make it out of your year-end budget in June, and then you get to the year-end, you don't have enough money, so what do you do? I think maybe you have to look at possibly doing something different
With that policy?
with that portion of it. I mean, I get what he's doing, but it does kind of leave it open-ended.
Yeah, I don't like that.
We trust our department heads. I think if somebody screwed up and did that, then. I've heard it.
Well, I guess my point is, you could, yeah.
We'll
I
find
mean,
the money.
It's not, I guess the question was asked for you to look that over. I mean, obviously, that's a department that needs cameras, but they've been down 2 years, so, I mean, the emergency yeah, what
I think it
defines
was-
an
I think it was
emergency?
5 months.
All right, what defines an emergency?
Yeah. I'm comfortable trusting our department heads to not screw that up. And if they do,
Well, then we're gonna
then
have to,
correct it.
yeah. Comes out of their paycheck.
I'll have to fight the wife for that one.
I just shouldn't fix it before it happens, but I guess right now we're on the spot for this particular instance. I'm only okay right now to let Salem look it over and give his 2 cents if he thinks it's a good deal or not, so.
Yeah, I just need to make sure, obviously, I don't recognize the components, so
Right.
I don't
I'm
have
okay with
that
an
expertise.
expertise put in on that. That's great by me. I got somebody that knows that stuff.
You can do that much.
All right.
Thank you. And then Officer Valero has passed his written exam with a 4.57 out of 5.
Wow.
Is that on the, he did very well. Is the MOU up for discussion? Do I need to be here? Because I know last time I was here and I left and it was discussed after I left. And there was some
I believe
incorrect information.
The 2 lead guys are on it. I know Mark sent it over to Steve. I haven't seen a reply.
That should be fully in motion.
I was gonna say, 'cause Mark sent it over to Steve.
A week ago,
It
right?
was pretty simple, I thought,
Roughly.
but I don't see an answer back from anybody. Mark copied me, but I don't see the answer back.
So, do you want to summarize for the chief what we think we sent over? Or what we did send over?
Well, you saw it.
Yeah, that option
Did see
two,
it.
that option 2 works. I just need something signed because we've got our old
So,
board,
yeah,
our,
it
you know,
was-
our old board
and it was-
scheduled Wednesday.
Not in non-public, it was in a meeting with our town council, so I think it's fine to repeat publicly
Yeah.
that we did, we talked about it and said, yep, we authorized Attorney Broth to move forward with option 2 and to make you aware of that. I think it was make you aware of that.
Hasn't happened. Well,
You were-
I take that back.
You were okay with option 2, you said it in an
Yeah,
email.
no, I said, yeah, he did say, Mark Boss said he was fine with it, was gonna recommend it to the board. That was prior to the last meeting, and then we had the last meeting, where there's more confusion.
And so we went in, we had that
With option
discussion with
two.
him.
No, I think there's been yet another meeting since the one that had a lot more confusion.
So, well, last week, we met with him after, we had a public meeting that ended in a non-public session, and then we exited that, we adjourned, and then we had a non-meeting with town
About the
council.
CBA,
At which time that was also discussed.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if it's you guys' intent to move
We-
forward, I'm gonna keep moving forward with knowing that the documents come.
Oh, hold on, we must be watching, because I just got an answer.
Yeah, it was option 2, you're good to go.
He has responded. Okay,
And the one thing I hedged on, because I don't remember precisely if we
it
had
says he's responded.
If
I
we'd
don't know what it
authorized-
says.
Attorney Broth to communicate with you directly or with, I'm blank on the other guy's name,
Oh,
the.
Mont Lazier?
union.
No,
guy.
the other
union
lawyer,
guy.
the
Steve.
union lawyer,
Oh, Steve Arnold.
Steve, yeah, I can't remember which of the two that we had asked him to go through.
He went directly to Steve.
Steve.
All I can tell you, at 9:06, it says he responded, but I can't open anything on my phone. I can tap away, but I
Yeah, the
got,
Wi-Fi down here is,
I was just gonna say, I can tap away and I got nothing.
but regardless, you should be good to go.
Okay.
I mean, is everybody,
It just says he's responded yes,
Yeah,
so
Okay.
I think you're
we-
good to go with it.
yeah, we gave the thumbs up
Okay.
Yeah,
internally.
just says he responded yes is all it says to me. Are you waiting on anything more? It just says yes.
Are you able to tell us anything about the timeline for expending ARPA funds while you're here? Or can you do
For
that?
the vehicle?
Yeah,
So,
sorry, for the, transmission, the communication stuff.
no, he hasn't got back to me since the last one.
Okay.
The last update I gave you is still the current update. They have, since September, they haven't been communicating as frequently, which is kind of frustrating. I had to threaten to go down there one time to get an answer out of them. I was like, we can just have this meeting in person, and I got an answer, so.
Okay. And have you seen any trends for service going up or down, or new services or different services than you've had calls for in the past? Anything like that that
It's pretty standard.
is driving your budget any direction?
Oh, wait, I thought you were still talking about radio. Do that one again?
No, trends for service, anything going up or down, or new calls, or increasing calls that you weren't expecting? Is any of that driving your budget?
No, the training line's the biggest line we've got, just because we have very competent officers who work here. We've had 2 traffic fatalities this year. Usually, state police handle those. I think that says something where they feel comfortable, where they turn that over to us and to have us investigate. We've had, obviously, about our bombing suspect. That was a very successful, quick arrest. We've had multiple sexual assault investigations that concluded in an arrest. We do get some fairly big crimes around here. Luckily, we're not getting the homicides, the robberies, or anything like that. We don't get very many burglaries, and that's a good thing about being in a Second Amendment area. Breaking into somebody's house here, you don't know what's coming, so. That's always great, so. But, yeah,
Imagine if homeowners had vests.
yeah.
and a helmet. Maybe a helmet
I
too
can see
for
if we
him.
can deputize you, how's that? Issue of that.
Sure.
So just to let you know, the union representative has signed it, so Mark will probably sign it in the morning.
Great, okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah, speeding's still our number one complaint. We just did get our laser units in. So once training's completed on those, we'll be able to put those out there. Those are the ones where you put it on the license plate and it gives you very accurate speed. We haven't got our speed signs in yet. As soon as we get them up, they'll go up around the schools.
And that was early next year, right?
For getting the signs?
Yeah.
As soon as we get them, we're gonna put them up.
I see a lot of towns getting them and putting them up various places.
Yeah, we're gonna put
How about the
and-
same one, the mobile ones?
Yes, yeah, we can move
I thought
those
that was something
location to
about-
location. We're also gonna put trackers on them just to let everybody know so they don't steal them. Because other departments have had theirs stolen.
Bless you.
All right, anybody else got anything? I want to thank Naomi, I came in today for payroll change form, and she
Yeah,
handed this to me, she did the rest of you guys, thank you.
yeah, very
Something
nice.
we've been talking about, and nobody's done it, so, thank you.
I got a tab for you next week to add to it.
Okay.
good.
I guess we talked in that meeting with town council about going into a non-public today,
Well,
ahead of Wednesday, under K,
To a non-public or non-meeting?
non-public.
Okay.
That would be right.
Thank you, chief.
Thank you.
yeah, I don't know about it, so if you guys want to make the motion,
You
have
ready to
it.
go home? It was, where is it here? All right, well, I'll make a motion that we go into non-public, under. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, so. Okay, no, you know what, you're right, it's a non-meeting, it's gonna be using 91A, section 2, paragraph 1, subparagraph A. I mean, not that, we're gonna adjourn, but then we're gonna have a non-meeting, to discuss some strategy or negotiations with respect to collective bargaining.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, so wait a minute, you,
Good night.
what ti- you have a second?
Yeah, we haven't voted yet, but we were waiting on you.
Favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, hold on one
want me
second.
to shut that door?
1 second.